Media Group station, broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios, powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. Now, Andrew Salchunas, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
And a good Tuesday morning, Philadelphia. I'm Andrew Salchunas, the midday show here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Hope you all had a good Monday, and now it's Tuesday, the worst day of the week. You know, I was talking to Jen Scordo yesterday after our show, before the best show ever, and, you know, we got into the conversations of Tuesdays being the worst day of the week, because there's nothing to look forward to. Like, I don't mind a Monday. You can come back in, you see everybody for the first time after a few days, you catch up. I hear about race stories on Bourbon Street. Wednesday's the midway point. Thursday's it's the day before Friday, and it's Friday. Tuesday's blow. Tuesdays is the worst day of the week. So we're going to get through this together over the course of 4 hours. And today I want to have a conversation about coaching. I want to have a conversation about what makes a good coach, what makes a bad coach. And this is kind of a topic that's across all sports, because when I first started thinking about this, my initial conversation was going to be about football. Shocker, the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Sirianni coming back. And, you know, just 2 years ago, they're in the Super Bowl, and he's the greatest coach invented ever. You know, he's the best coach ever. He's going to be Bill Belichick one day. And then this past season happens when you go from 10-1 to 11-6. You get embarrassed in the playoff game, and now he should be fired. And look, I'm somebody that did not want to retain Nick Sirianni. I will forever remind you of that. Even if it's good or bad next year with Nick Sirianni, I did not want to bring him back. And I'm one of those people that says I hope I'm wrong. I never root to be right unless it's a good thing for the team. Like if I said you should keep Nick Sirianni and then I root for my opinion to be correct, that means the Eagles are 15-2, and that's what I want, right? I want the Eagles to do good. I'll never root for my opinion when it's the opposite, though, when it comes to poor coaching and poor play. But anyways, I saw a tweet yesterday from Mike Florio toward the end of the show of Pro Football Talk, a guy that I don't truly like. You know, he puts out that ridiculous article last week about this is how the Eagles would get out of Jalen Hurts' contract via trade. And I'm like, whoa, where is this story even coming from? Why are we doing this? I'm not the biggest Mike Florio fan. I'm honest about it. I don't hide from it. But I saw a tweet yesterday toward the end of the show that intrigued me, one that I know Ray even saw. And it's something that I know will make me sound archaic. I understand it. But it's something that I truly believe. So he puts out a tweet yesterday regarding a conversation he had with a coach. Now, we don't know what this coach is. Is this coach high school? Is this coach college? Is this coach a coordinator? Is this coach a strength and conditioning coach? Or is he a head coach in the NFL? So Mike Florio tweets this out yesterday. A coach told me earlier today that analytics was just a way for people who never would have gotten jobs in football to get jobs in football. To understand that is to understand why they get so defensive whenever anyone questions analytics. Now, it's funny, right? We've had this conversation about analytics in the past. If you make a bad decision in a game, you can always just back up your decision with the chart or with the numbers or all that kind of stuff, right? Why did you go for it in this situation? Well, according to our analytics department, this is the green zone. I remember Doug Peterson always talking about the green zone. There was the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. The red zone, you don't do it. And by red zone, I don't mean inside the 20-yard line. I mean, on the chart. If it's red, you do not go for it on this down and distance, this situation in the game. It's got to be a pretty big chart, honestly. But the yellow zone, it's a gut feel, and then the green zone is go for it. You started seeing it on Sunday Night Football, actually. Sunday Night Football has started to do the should they go for it? It's the AWS analytics decision, and a lot of the times it's go for it, right? Because that's today's NFL. Now, the reason why this tweet even comes out yesterday is probably because of what Dan Campbell did on Sunday during the NFC Championship game and how the analytics said to go for it in the situation when they were up 2 scores and not to kick the field goal, where the field goal would have made it a 3-score game had the kicker made it. But on the flip side, I saw Greg Olson tweeting about this. How come the analytics doesn't take into account what if the field goal kicker misses it? Because the kicker was, below 50% from 50 yards and above, right? So that should come into your equation. But that's what it always seems to be. It always seems to be an equation. It always seems to be, well, the analytics says this. This is why we made that decision. It doesn't seem like many people do the gut feeling anymore. And to me, one of the things that makes a good coach is the guy that can partner analytics with also gut feeling, which is why sometimes I like the established head coach to be running my football team and not the guy that nobody's ever heard of, like a Nick Sirianni or even a Doug Peterson. I know what Doug P brought to this team, and I know he used analytics in a lot of ways when it came to decision making. And those decisions led to a Super Bowl, the only Super Bowl in Eagles franchise history. So I understand how analytics can be a helpful tool, but sometimes I do believe that analytics can also be the death of some teams. And when I say this conversation spans over all sports, one of the first guys I thought of this morning was our man Sugar Bear. Sugar Bear, if you weren't listening during the playoff run, is a big Phillies fan, a big baseball fan, huge baseball fan. Phillies are his favorite team, but he is a baseball guy first, right? And every single day, the phone call steered into a Rob Thompson conversation. He does not like Rob Thompson a little bit. He thinks Rob Thompson is too much in the boat of analytics. I believe that Rob Thompson goes analytics, but also goes with gut feeling, which sometimes is the pulling a pitcher maybe a bit too early. But if you go back to 2022 and that miraculous playoff run, it worked the entire time. Unfortunately, it didn't work in 2023. And, of course, there's the conversation. Jason Stark said on this station on the best show ever that maybe it wasn't Topper making a lot of the decisions, and maybe it was people above him and those people above him in the analytics department. And it goes back to the analytics thing and how I think sometimes that can be the death of a team if that's all you are relying on, right? NBA analytics a lot of the times is taking three-point shots. The mid-range game is dead. Well, I got the greatest player in the NBA right now, Joel Embiid, who feasts in the mid-range, right? And I know that they haven't gotten out of the second round just yet, but I know that I have the best player on the court every single night when Joel Embiid is playing. And he lives in the mid-range. And so why would I force Joel Embiid to do certain things that may go against his game just for the benefit of analytics? So what I want to have a conversation with you today, and it doesn't just have to be about analytics. I want to know what you believe makes a good coach. Now, think about the coaches in this city. Nick Nurse is a good coach for multiple reasons. And I can also say he did it successfully to the point of winning an NBA championship. Now, did he have Kawhi Leonard playing like a freak during that entire playoff run and hitting a quadruple doink fadeaway three into the, on the baseline? Yeah, of course that all happened, and that set the Raptors off into the Eastern Conference Finals and eventually won the NBA Finals. But Nick Nurse, to me, is a good head coach. Now, Nick Nurse has, different qualities than John Tortorella, right? Nick Nurse is a tactician. Nick Nurse is a guy where he will find every single element in somebody's game or every single advantage that he can find against an opposition, right? That's what we get out of Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is great at in-game adjustments. Nick Nurse is great at play calls, both offensively and defensively, especially in the final quarter of a basketball game. Whereas the previous coach that coached the Sixers and Doc Rivers, I don't think Doc Rivers is the worst coach of all time. I think Doc Rivers is a great teacher. I saw Joel Embiid's game grow year by year with Doc Rivers. I saw Tyrese Maxey's game grow year by year with Doc Rivers. I also saw Doc Rivers have absolutely no idea of what to do in the fourth quarter, and he would just say to his team, "Come on, guys, play hard." Right? Those, here was Doc Rivers during the recent timeout, and it was just, "Come on, play hard, come on." Like, that's not coaching. That to me, that's not even motivational speaking, because what message are you sending? I thought he was a great teacher. I don't think he was a great in-game coach. Nick Nurse is a great in-game coach. John Tortorella on the ice. I'd be lying to you if I knew everything that John Tortorella does during a game and in the process leading up to a game. But I know that guy gets the most out of every single player. Does it get to a point where it might be exhausting for some players? I'm sure it does. But you know what? Sometimes I blame the players. The NHL's funny to me. A coach can have so much success for 2 years, but then the message will go dry and they get fired 3 games into a season. Look at Peter Laviolette here in Philadelphia. Like, to me, I find that funny. Like, why is it always the players? It's never the players' fault. Oh, the players, they just got tired of them. Well, get over it. Like, you guys have been successful. Shut up and play hockey, right? But I know that John Tortorella is going to get the most out of every single player, and that's why you see a team that wasn't supposed to even be in a playoff conversation is in the playoff conversation. Rob Thompson, I think, mixes in old school and new school, which is why I think he's a good manager. Is he the greatest manager in Phillies franchise history? No. But he was much better than Gabe Kapler and Joe Girardi. And then in football, well, what makes a good coach? Obviously, you need to be able to have a handle on your locker room, which is something that I don't think Nick Sirianni had second half of the season. You have to be a mastermind, probably either on offense or defense. And if you're not calling plays, you obviously have to help formulate the game plans week in and week out. Those game plans went stale, and that's why he's taking a step back. I'm trying to figure out what it is that Nick Sirianni does well for me to say that he is a good coach in the NFL. Is he a guy that caught lightning in a bottle for the first 2 years and everything went stale? His messaging, his game planning. Did all those things go stale? So it's kind of an open-ended conversation, right? It's not something where it's a hot-button topic. Should he stay? Should he go? 610. No. I want to have an open-ended conversation about coaching at 610-632-0975. What is it to you that you think makes a good coach? And do we have good coaches in this city? And this conversation about analytics from Mike Florio about how analytics might just be a way for people to get jobs in the NFL, you know, in recent years, you could make the case that these analytic-driven coaches have also been very successful. But I don't know. Is Andy Reid, is he at the teat of analytics, for lack of a better term? Like, no. Andy Reid just keeps doing what he's been doing and formulating incredible offenses. And that's why they're back in the Super Bowl again. So the conversation about analytics is out there as well. Is it a helpful tool? Can it be a helpful tool? To me, sometimes I think teams rely way too much on it. And I think it sometimes can be the death for them. 610-632-0975. Get Ray's thoughts on this coming up next. I would love to hear from you on the phones. We have a lot more in store for you today. Hoping to speak with Jeff McClain today. Yesterday, we did the Stay or Go Inquirer piece. Would love to get Jeff's opinion on some of the players. He had Avonte Maddox as a guy he would not bring back. Something that was on my mind all day yesterday after the show. So we'll speak to Jeff at some point in the 11 o'clock hour. And somebody that deserves an apology. I'll tell you who next. Right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Short-handed Sixers fall short. I'm Ray Dunn. This update is brought to you by PJ.
Fanatic fan favorites on 97.5 The Fanatic.
By now, you've heard all of our ads. America's largest injury law firm. It means that when you hire us, you get a legal army. When it comes to law, size matters. Morgan & Morgan. Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
Want to hear a jingle? Yeah, neither do we. This commercial break is brought to you jingle-free by NJM Insurance.
Now more with Andrew Salchunas on 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
It's 10:21 on the Midday Show. I'm Andrew Salchunas. 10 o'clock hour brought to us by Window Nation. Take advantage of Window Nation's 50% off sale on all style windows. Plus, make no down payment with no payments and no interest for 12 full months. Call 866-90Nation or visit windownation.com. Jeff McClain's going to be joining the show coming up at 11:30 today. He's actually at the Senior Bowl, Ray. So maybe we can see what's going on down in Mobile, Alabama. But we'll also talk about his Stay or Go article, or the interactive article that was on the Inquirer that we ran through yesterday during the show. And also I'll ask him the question about what makes a good coach. And I know it's open-ended, right? Like, I know it's an open-ended question because it is so open-ended in sports. Because you can have a coach that wins Coach of the Year or a finalist or a top 5 finalist like Nick Sirianni was last year. And the very next year, there could be questions about whether or not he should, have his job still. And now it's going to go into the next season where he's going to be automatically on the hot seat come week 1, right? It's amazing how this can happen. Gone are the days of the coaches that last as long as they do, right? Andy Reid and Bill Belichick are really probably the last of their kinds, I guess, in football. Andy's still doing it. Bill's now gone. He's no longer with the New England Patriots. Unless you sustain success. Like, it is amazing to me that a guy like Sean Payton lasted as long as he did in New Orleans, and he left because he didn't like the situation. So it's not just teams are moving on from their coaches. Sometimes a coach like Sean Payton can go, yeah, I put this team in cap hell with some of the decisions I made. I'm going to take a year off. And then he goes to Denver. Sean McVay, yeah, you know what? I talked to the owner. We gave up all our first-round picks, made a superstar team, won a Super Bowl. I know this team's going to go to hell after this. So I might just retire, even though I'm like 12 years old, and I've had as much success as I've had so far in the NFL. It's fascinating to me how times have changed in sports, which is why I think what makes a good coach and a bad coach has also changed in sports. Like, gone are the days of Bobby Knight, who passed away not too long ago, right? Like, just yelling at players for the sake of yelling at players, thinking that that's going to get something out of them. How many times have we heard the conversations of, man, coaches can't necessarily coach the way they used to because athletes are making so much money now that they can just pretty much tune you out. I think football is the only sport where you can really have that one-on-one conversation with the head coach where it's actually meaningful anymore. But in the NBA, I mean, think about it. Like Ben Simmons, who we'll get into later today. Ben Simmons, when he was still with the Sixers, was able to not take a flight back home with the team after a terrible loss because they wanted him to he wanted a night with Kendall, and they allowed it. I don't think Doc Rivers allowed it, but I'm sure somebody above Doc Rivers goes, yeah, Ben, do what you need to do, right? And we talk about Nick Sirianni not really having much power in the Eagles locker room because maybe Howie Rhodes is making decisions. I think that's across sports, man. Mentioned the Jason Stark thing with Rob Thompson. He may not have made the decision about Christopher Sanchez coming out as early as he did. Jason Stark is under the assumption that maybe somebody above him made that decision. So I'd love to hear from you, 610-632-0975. What do you think makes a good coach in any of their respective sports, football, basketball, baseball, hockey? And do we have those good coaches here in Philadelphia right now? I think we can all agree that Nick Nurse is probably number one in this city. I think we love what John Tortorella is getting out of this team. But I think Nick Nurse, what you've seen, the growth of this team in just half a season as head coach, shows, wow, look when a real tactician is your head coach and what this guy can do. Because now, look, truth will be told, come playoff time, that's when we'll really get our answer. I'm making speculations on January 30th. But I think Nick Nurse is number one. But you could have made the case 6 months ago that Nick Sirianni was number one. Ray Dunn, good morning. What's going on, man?
Good morning.
Now, what do you think makes a good coach? And I know it's different for all sports. That's the big thing, right? Like baseball, I say gut feel, but baseball, analytics has always been around. It's just, it's changed a little bit. Like it used to just be lefty-lefty. Right now it's, you got to check the splits. And there's so many numbers to back up every single decision. But is that necessarily a good thing? Like the analytics should have told you maybe back in 2022 not to put out Alvarado a third time against Alvarez. But is there an analytic to that? There's third time through the order. But is there third time in a series in a 7-game series? Right? Like that, I don't know if that stuff's out there.
Yeah, I mean, you could be looking at how, Alvarez has fared against fastballs next, miles per hour in what location, where, there's a ton of information. I think the word that comes to mind when it comes to what makes a good coach for me is balance. I think they're striking the perfect balance between one, marrying the way you feel about a situation versus what the numbers tell you. One, balancing out your authority in a locker room, your authority in a meeting room versus the relationships you cultivate and being there for the players that you have, the other coaches that you have. I think all of it comes back down to how you're able to balance all of that out.
Right. You mentioned relationships, which I think is very important. Zach Wheeler was pissed 2 years ago when he came off the mound. Rightfully so. He's the ace of the staff, right? He was still humming. He was pitching really well. And he gets pulled, and he was legitimately upset. And I imagine that he and Topper had a conversation at some point during the offseason about, hey, don't do that again. Right? And you saw in these playoffs of this past season, he did let him go a little bit deeper, especially into the pitch count. And I think that relationship aspect's a pretty big deal. I know we made a lot of A.J. Brown's reaction on that the third down play call against the Cardinals, where it was the screen pass to Kenneth Gainwell. He said he was upset because he saw Devontae Smith get shaken up on the play. Sometimes I don't have to buy everything they say. If I'm A.J. Brown, I'm pissed that you didn't run a slant route with me that seems to have worked all season long. Instead, you ran a screen to Kenneth Gainwell, who's one of your lesser receivers. He's not even a receiver. He's one of your lesser options on the team. I think you also have to marry that instead of going, well, it's worked in the past, which is something that I guess analytics is information, right? So part of we did this before and it worked. Well, you have to also understand spot. Now, the Lions situation, and once more, I'll read you the tweet from Mike Florio because this is kind of what drove the conversation today. Mike Florio put out this tweet yesterday toward the end of the show. Coach told me earlier today that analytics was just a way for people who never would have gotten jobs in football to get jobs in football. To understand that is to understand why they get so defensive whenever anyone questions analytics. I'm guessing this is in full response to what the Lions did, right? He doesn't say based off of whatever game took place on Sunday. That would be my guess because that was the big talking point. The Lions had an opportunity to make it a 3-score game had they kicked a field goal. And if they kicked the field goal, all of a sudden it's a 3-score game. The momentum's not the same. And by the way, momentum's a big part of analytics not coming into account. A computer doesn't know ebbs and flows of games. But you put it up on the screen. I appreciate it. The Lions kicker from 48-plus yards, which is where the kick would have been from, was 9 of 20 this season, to which you mentioned is the worst in NFL history with 20-plus tries. So not only did the analytics tell him to go for it in that situation, but maybe the football guy who would normally go, man, let me just make it a 3-score game, also knows that information. So it's that yin and the yang right there of, all right, yeah, maybe the smart thing to do is bleep analytics. Let me just make it a 3-score game with this field goal. But that's taking into account your field goal kicker and the success they're having.
Yeah, and on top of that, we're talking, you want to go gut feel here? Guy on the road, outside when his home is an indoor stadium.
Yeah.
There's some of these things that, and I love the, umbrella in which people throw analytics out there where it just kind of becomes the boogeyman for numbers you don't like. If it's a number that supports what you got, that's just a stat. If it's a number that does something that you don't like or is the reason behind a decision you don't enjoy, that's analytics. The difference between statistics and analytics for people, the stat is something that supports what I'm going for. Analytics is everything that I think is wrong. Like it becomes the boogeyman for decisions that you don't like.
And vice versa. And vice versa. Sometimes there's the coaches that use analytics to back up their decision, right? Like, this is why I did it, or this is why it worked, right? Now, when it works, sometimes they don't do analytics. Sometimes they just say, I made the right decision.
Yeah. Well, and again,
it's when they're wrong is when they use analytics.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. When the decision's wrong, it's analytics' fault. When the decision's right, it's no one gets the credit for it. It's a thankless thing. Like, being the numbers guy is a thankless thing. I also think the Florio thing, like this, and the told me today, analytics was just a way for people who have never gotten jobs in football to get jobs in football. It's ripe coming from Florio. It's a very ripe tweet coming from him. Like, Florio is pointing at them like, look at those nerds. Like, somebody told me. That coach looks at you like a nerd too. Like,
right.
And that includes us. I'm not saying that's not me taking a shot just necessarily at Florio, but it's like, analytics guys get jobs in football when never would have gotten jobs in football. Yeah, no kidding, man. This is coming from a lawyer who started a blog site. Like, like what are we doing here with the whole taking shots at the analytics community when, let's be honest with you, it's a nerd calling a nerd a nerd. Like, this is a lot of name calling for.
Well, no. He's not calling anybody a nerd. He's reporting on what a coach told him, right?
It's pretty pointed. It's a pretty pointed thing. You could keep this one under wraps. I'm sure a coach just went up to him and was like,
said this.
Yeah,
hey, you never know. You never know. Now, we also don't know who this coach is, right? Like, this could be a coach that's been out of the league for 20 years and hates analytics, right?
Right, and I mean, this has to be some prodding here. Like, I don't imagine he's just walking down a hallway and a coach is like, hey, or, he picks up the phone. Someone calls him. He gets a call on his phone. He answers the phone, and the coach is like, I just want to go off on analytics.
I need you to put this out there for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
But look, I know that I sound like a caveman when I talk about analytics because I hate how it's used as a defense mechanism for some decisions being made. And, like... I saw, where was this? I'm pretty sure, you know what? Mikey mistweeted out about it, and I'm pretty sure it was week 18. It was the last game for the Jags. And the Jags were down, I think 16 or 15 or whatever. And they scored a touchdown, right? I'm guessing they were down 16. No, they would have been down 14. I'm sorry, 14. They scored the touchdown. Now it's a 8-point lead, right? And they decide to go for 2. Because if they go for 2, the next touchdown and the point after gives them the win, right? Well, what if you don't get it? Now you're down 8, and now you have to try that again next time. Or I've also seen it play out this way, and he did this with the Eagles, and it bothered me to hell. And I love Doug, right? I'm a Dougie P guy. Doug did this once when they were down 15. He scored the touchdown. Made it a 9-point game, right? Instead of kicking the extra point to make it an 8-point game, which would have made it a 1-possession game, he goes for 2. Well, what if you don't get it? In which, at that time, I forget what game it was, they didn't get it. Well, now it's a 2-possession game. Like, to me, that's dumb. But the analytics backs up that decision. John Harbaugh, who, look, they were 1 win away from getting to the Super Bowl, big in analytics with the Baltimore Ravens. He did stuff like that in the past before, too. How does that one make sense? Yeah, if you get it, it's great. It's a 7-point game. You can tie it. You don't have to go for 2 the next time. But if you don't get it, it's a 2-score game. The game's pretty much over. Especially if there's only like 6 minutes left in the game. Why are you doing that? You now need to make 2 more stops.
I guess the way you're looking at that, and listen, this is to go deeper than where I'm at. I'm not sitting here saying that I've crunched every number I know the way. If you're saying, this play from the 2-yard line, 50% of the time generates a score, then you're saying one of these 2 times we have to go for 2 and get it. Let's get it now and move it along the way. I don't know necessarily what numerically pushes you to do it. I see guys continuing to try to do it. There's a part of me that's just like, put up that extra point, but also That like we as a football community really overrate the success of kickers because you just assume it. The point after should not be something that is drama filled, but we've seen the point after go awry before.
But then if you don't get the 2-point I gotta imagine that Jake Elliott's extra point percentage is much higher than 50%.
Oh yeah, well in that specific instance, but I think you're the guys looking at this analytics.
Okay, the other coach I brought up was Harbaugh. He's got the greatest kicker in the history of the league.
Okay, but they're not the only guys doing it.
There are
other teams doing it.
But these things bother me.
You're pointing out two good kickers. There's 32 teams, and they cycle through kickers all the time.
I get that, but just because it works for that team doesn't mean you should try to do it with this team.
Well, and that's part of the feel of it. That's part of the balance that goes into being a coach. But I'm telling you that, like, numerically, what you're looking at here for these teams, you're looking at situations where they say, okay, in this instance, what we've got going can put us in a position to score here that puts us. Like, they're looking at ultimately how down the line, how down the turn this puts you in a position.
Yeah, but they think down the line about how it puts me in a certain situation, but they don't think in the here and now of, well, if this doesn't work, crap. I almost cursed. Crap. We're now down 9 with 6 minutes left, and I got to get 2 stops with my defense that doesn't really get stops all that many times.
Well, and if you're looking at, well, if they get it, then
all right, then now you're down 2. Now you're down 2 because you scored a touchdown and get the extra point. Now you're down 2 and you got 2 minutes left. And you're still trying, it's just.
But they're looking again. I don't think you ever call a play for the play not to work. Like if you look at the instance, you look at the instance,
I feel like that has to be a part of the equation. Like, what if it doesn't work? Right? You're using all these percentages, you're using all this data to back up your decision. But if it doesn't work, you have to have a plan. You can't just all of a sudden give up.
You're not giving up. But
you pretty much are. If you make a 2-score game with 6 minutes left, you're losing chance. Odds are analytics. I would guess there's analytics with, oh man, time on the clock. This team gets together 3 minutes. All right, so now there's gonna be 3 minutes left on the clock. We're gonna have to drive downfield to get 2 scores. Like, I get that analytics can be a helpful tool, but I do think sometimes it hurts them.
Yeah, it can hurt you, especially when you don't actually execute what you have to put out there. Right. But you're running this play with the thought process of, okay, we know tendencies here. We've got percentage of what they do in these short yardage packages. We know what we do. And we're going, like, it's an overload of information, which is why balancing that with how you actually feel in that moment. You know, I'm not telling you it has to be the end-all, be-all, but I'm also telling you they're probably looking at that situation like if we go for 2 here, the chance of us getting 7 or, you know, I know we made fun of Riverboat Ron for being, you know, regular guy Ron earlier this year when the Commanders could have went for 2 and went for the win.
And they didn't. They go for the tie. They go to overtime. Eagles end up winning that game. But that's also, okay, is that analytics or is that, Ron, you got nothing to lose. You might as well go for it.
But okay.
You know what I mean?
But what season, I'm forgetting the instance where you're talking about the Eagles. I don't know what game, what instance, what team are you playing?
I think this was one of those Wentz years where they were 5-7, and it was when they went on the 4 straight.
Right. And that's a year where they might look at the talent they have on the field, the way they're stopping teams. They're looking at, okay, if we go for 2 here, we put ourselves in a position to be down 7. We could score, and if we like the situation, we like the field, that we can end up going for 2 and stealing this game. You know, it's not. We're not going to play for, because if you don't get the 2 there, yeah, you're in trouble.
You're
down
screwed.
9 points.
You're down 9 points with 6 minutes left.
If you get the 2 there and you're down 7,
okay,
you have the opportunity to tie or to get the win.
But sometimes whenever you're making a decision in life, let me ask you a question. Forget sports.
Let me finish this thought.
Fine, get it out.
But if you just kick the extra point there and you're not certain you're going to get the 2 the first time, you're rolling the dice the next time to go for 2 to try the tie.
I'd rather still have another opportunity. To me, analytics is also continuing your chances of doing things. Like, if you have a big decision in life, right? Don't you weigh both good and bad when
Absolutely.
you make it? Or, you know what I mean? Like, all right, if I do this decision, that'd be great, but what are the consequences of this decision? Yeah. It just seems like there's never a thought of consequences.
I think when they look at this, you start weighing, like, okay, this is the decision we make. You know, you go down 9, you start walking down the paths of that. And obviously that entire road does not end up good.
Basically lost the game.
And again, we're using a very specific scenario to try and make a catch-all for this entire, use of numbers. But you go down the other line of this, and you think, okay, you make this a 7-point game. What options do you have there? What percentages break out where you end up in a position to win this football game in the next 6 minutes? You know, if you're down that much, that late, desperation sometimes puts you in a position where, okay, where's the best percentage where I get out of here with a win in the next 6 minutes versus percentages of ending up with a loss? You're already behind the 8 ball when you're talking about scoring down 2 scores in the last 6-7 minutes of a game.
Or, oh man, What if we have to just try to force overtime? I don't think that's the worst thing in the world either. To me.
Well, you already put yourself, you think about game situation. If you're in a situation where you're already down 2 scores late in a game, likely you have either not been able to generate a ton of offense or your defense has not been able to generate a ton of stops. So how many more stops do you think you're going to be able to versus how many more scores you're going to get?
That's the other thing.
How many more scores you're going to get?
That's the other thing. All right, so you're talking about spot, right? This is why I think Nick Sirianni's not the greatest head coach in the world. Earlier this year against the Arizona Cardinals. Well, we got to take into account the 4-minute offense. We got to take into account the kick line. We got to take into account how much time's left on the clock and blah, blah, blah. They didn't take into account for a second that their defense did not get a freaking stop, that they did not force a punt all game against the Arizona Cardinals.
He got pantsed by Gannon.
I know he did. But that's the thing to me. Sometimes relying on, in the bed of analytics and going, this is what we need to do because this is what's going to work. This is how we're going to win. Sometimes it makes you shoot yourself in the foot because that should have been a situation where they probably should have gone for 7 because they couldn't get a freaking stop. Now, it's easy to say we were looking for the kick line in your press conference 2 days later.
Yeah, after you got called for a penalty and you were backed up.
After you lost. Right, exactly. But to me, sometimes I feel like they use analytics as this is the end-all, be-all. This is what we should do. This is how we're going to win. And then if it doesn't work, there's no answer for it. There's no answer as to why something could have gone wrong. It's always, all right, this is how we're going to win. There's never even a second thought about it. The other day, and real quick, before we get to breaks, and we'll get to the calls, 610-632-0975, and I got to tell you about the player that you need to apologize to. And I apologize for my caveman outlook on analytics, but hey, I'm not sorry about it. The other day, which game was Fox doing? They were doing the Niners game, right? They were doing the Niners-Lions. Greg Olsen said something that I agreed with, but I knew wasn't going to happen. So the Lions had the football. They were down, 10? So they still had a chance very little chance. Greg Olsen said, all right, well, what they should probably do, the Lions, is just quickly get into field goal range and take the 3 and then try to get an onside kick. And I know, the onside kick, that barely happens anymore. But I knew that wasn't going to be the case. Because touchdowns are more important in the mind of, I would imagine, analytics, yeah, I agree. Touchdowns are more important. But you're losing so much more time trying to get downfield. And that idea of just trying to get the 3 points real quick and conserving time, because time is also a part of it, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Is that the best decision? I don't know. I don't have a freaking calculator in front of me that tells me what the best decision is. I know an onside kick barely ever gets recovered, right? Well, you're scoring the touchdown, and now you all of a sudden only have 30 seconds left with one timeout, whereas maybe with 1 minute and 20, you still give your team a shot if you can get 3 stops and don't let Christian McCaffrey get a first down. I understand. It sounds very archaic. I understand it. But I hear what whoever this coach was saying to Mike Florio, that sometimes analytics is a reason why people may get jobs. What does Nick Sirianni do well?
Okay, but you're the Nick Sirianni and the analytics conversation. To me, I see why we're marrying the two of them right now, why we're having this conversation. But the analytics guy that makes his way up to the point where he's making decisions, there is someone in a headset. You brought up Andy Reid. The Chiefs have someone in a headset that is giving Andy Reid percentages of what's happening. That's a job that someone has, and Andy Reid has the vote to say yes or no to do it. But the Chiefs right now are our modern day dynasty. They have people making these decisions. The analytics guy that got into that space is in that space for a reason. He's been there over a decade. He is a confidant there of Andy Reid, even though Andy Reid's the old guard.
Yes.
This is something that teams have. Do you over-rely on it? Do some teams over-rely on it? Absolutely.
Do. Yeah.
Yeah, when we look at the Lions, that was their thing. They were going to gamble. And, hey, today, the conversation about Dan Campbell will be entirely different if guys knew how to catch the football.
Right, I know. Josh Reynolds should have made that catch. It's a first down, and that game's totally different. All right, we'll continue the conversation. What makes a good coach in sports? Because I think that changes as years go on. Do we have good coaches in this city? And the conversation about analytics. I see Freddie wants to talk about it. I would love to get your thoughts on this when it comes to analytics. And I'm sure there's a kid my age that's listening right now going, oh, my God, how old is this dude? I don't care. Sometimes I think it's the enemy. I'm Andrew Salchunas. It's the Midday Show right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic. and WPEN HD1 Burlington, Philadelphia. A Beasley Media Group station. Broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios. Powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. Andrew Salchunas, 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
It's 10:52 on the Midday Show, 97.5 The Fanatic. I'm Andrew Salchunas. Jeff McClain joining the show coming up at 11:30, getting into a handful of conversations. I don't want this show to be just about analytics. Like, I do want to try to figure out what makes a good coach, right? So forget analytics for a second, right? There's the idea of the player's coach, right? Is that something that's good? Is that something that's sustainable, right? Nick Sirianni seems to be a player's coach, but at some point, like, I wonder if at some point the player's coach, when it's time to have tough conversations, can be a problem. Now, I don't think Nick Sirianni has shied away from that. I think about Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown just playing together, right? Best friends. And now all of a sudden there's questions about, oh, my God, are they no longer friends anymore? Like, can sometimes that relationship, like, there is a reason why you probably shouldn't be friends with your boss, or your boss shouldn't be friends with you is probably more like it. Because when it comes time to these hard conversations, obviously there's a respect thing, but if it's the boss's say, then you kind of got to adhere to it and not all of a sudden be like, oh, man, I thought we were tight. I wonder, like, is that something that can last, right? I don't know. I remember in baseball, unrelated to the players coach thing, Dusty Baker, who recently retired, he was on a podcast with, I think it was Stark. Doesn't Stark do one with Glanville? Right, it's two of them. Starkville. That's great. Yeah. And they got into the conversation of old versus new, and I thought Dusty Baker was fascinating during it, and he was pointing out how why is in every walk of life, most walks of life, people look up to the previous generation, like music. How many times do you hear somebody redo a song that somebody else did before instead of just trying to always come up with new things and or rip the old or whatever? Like, I feel like a lot of music or musicians appreciate the music that happened before them.
Especially because you listen to Bublé.
Exactly. I mean, look, Bublé, what is he doing? What did Haley tell us? He's a captain of one of the all-star teams?
Not my captain.
So you're rooting for the other squad, regardless.
I'm just saying, NHL, got to be better at business.
Oh, man, Bublé's good.
No.
Stick
Stop.
Come on, man.
No. Get better, NHL.
Anyways, but Dusty Baker was, saying, how come in baseball all of a sudden it's like if you're old, like you shouldn't be here anymore? Now, I also understand that Dusty Baker managed the Astros. There's a lot of talent on that team, right? And the only reason why the manager before him got fired was because of a cheating scandal, right? So I understand that, right? Like, I don't think Dusty Baker all of a sudden turned the Astros into a dynasty. They were already a dynasty, but I didn't hear anybody complain about Dusty Baker with the Astros as this older guy that kind of just went with his gut, it seemed like. But I'm sure he also had information, right? Like, I just wonder what makes a good coach in any sport. Like, is that player manager? Is it the older vet? I don't know. Like, Gabe Kapler seems to be a guy where after 2 or 3 years, you're sick of that guy because he's weird.
Has the right take on walking, though. You should walk everywhere. I don't know if you saw that video.
I like walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to walk. I mean, when I lived in Manioc, that's all I did.
Yeah, that's all I do right now. But to the point of this conversation where you're going with the older, like, I don't think there's something wrong with having, and I think that comes with experience, because I think with that experience, you're able to better balance the information you're being given and what you've seen. Like, that's why I don't think there's a problem. Like, Rob Thompson, for example, has been in baseball for
long time.
Ever.
For life. He's a lifer, yeah.
Yeah. He's being given information, but he has seen games play out where he can draw on, hey, I know whether it be this matchup or I know with the way this pitcher throws, it reminds me of this pitcher that used to face a batter similar to this. Like, he can synthesize that and he can balance the information they're giving him versus what he sees out there on the field. Now, obviously, with the conversation of who's making decisions and who's making that also blurs that line a little bit. But I think that's why, and that's also why I think when I bring up, the Chiefs and their use of analytics, Andy Reid has seen a lot of football. He's made a lot of mistakes. We know that in this town for sure.
Yeah.
So he knows the situation. He's able to synthesize that information with his own experiences and balance that out to use it. I think that's the important part of this entire conversation.
Yeah, the balancing act's a big deal. So, Colin Newby does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Does a lot of great work with our digital department. He came in here during the break, and he's big into analytics. And I think I struck a nerve with Colin because he was a little heated, right, about how you shouldn't complain about something you don't truly understand. Which I was like, wow, I wasn't ready for that deep conversation before the 11 o'clock hour even hit.
Yeah,
like come on, man. But does anyone truly know what analytics is? Like, I think it's a very broad term.
And that's what it is. It's used. I feel like it's kind of used, thrown out there when you don't like what you see. That's analytics.
Right, but there are coaches themselves that when something doesn't work out, bring up, well, the numbers said this was the decision. Like, they themselves have brought it up, right? So it's not just like me on the radio going, man, that was a bad decision. Must have been analytics. When the coaches themselves say, yeah, this didn't work out because of our numbers tell us this, and then it's almost like, off my hands, off my numbers. The numbers told us this.
They could be pushing it off their hands, or they could also be just using that phrasing to shut down a question.
Could be.
Like, and part of that also, when we go into numbers, like, especially, conversation, we've married Nick Sirianni here. Sirianni is Mr. Competitive Advantage, Mr. all these different things.
Right.
He's telling you numbers, made a decision. That's probably because he doesn't feel like giving the long explanation where he feels like he's going to reveal something about the way they think. Like, and I think some coaches think that way, where it's like, one, is this answer going to push anything forward? Is me really breaking down where the numbers go going to push anything forward? Like, so I think we blame numbers, we blame analytics for things that honestly it becomes, well, why'd they make that unconventional decision? Well, they must be trying to change it might just be.
But they themselves sometimes say it too. Now, like I remember another Peterson era story for you. So it was 4th down on the goal line. And if the Eagles were down 3. Or not, it wasn't the goal line. It was like, inside the 5-yard line. They could have kicked the 20-yard chip shot, made it 3-3 football game. Instead, they decided to go for it. I think this is one of those years where, like, they needed a win. So I didn't hate the decision, right? And the numbers, the chart, everything, right? Everything said go for it. The problem is the play call. The play call was a fade to Hakeem Butler. Hakeem Butler, who had not had one single reception in his NFL career. But because he's 6'5", and that's not analytics, that's just sports. But, like, all right, so your decision is to go for it in this situation, fine. But then your play call is throwing it to a receiver who doesn't have a single reception in his career, and this is late in the season now. And so using analytics is a helpful tool, but then also not making the great play call. Ultimately, this conversation is about what makes a good coach, right? Like, it's not just about analytics. That's what I'm trying to get at.
But the driving force behind that decision might have been analytics. The driving force behind that play call is not.
Right.
Because the fade, I don't think the fade, and this is not something that, like, I don't think the fade is favorably looked upon.
No, the fade is going away.
Yes, because I don't think
the fade is dying in the NFL. Now, the RJ interns checked in, kind of with a similar thought to Colin, I believe. Problem with many views on analytics is idea that there is only one method. There is not one size fits all. Not all analytics books say the same. Peterson going for it is you are bound to know if you need 2 possessions because you are going to have to get 2 point at sometime. That was our conversation earlier. Yeah, you do have to get it at some time, but if you don't get it the first time, now you're down 9, the game's pretty much over. I might as well try to give myself a chance another time.
I guess, but at some point you have to get it.
Right.
So, like to me, I look at it as, okay, you're trying to get it there. Now you know what you're set up against. If you tried to get it later on, you don't get it. Are you, like, is the moral victory that you end up losing by 2 instead of losing by 9? Like, it seems like we're just kind of putting you in positions where, oh, yeah, we lost. But, hey, we made it close. The last 6 minutes of this game were better theater than they would have been.
I guess.
And
I guess that's one way of looking at it.
That goes back to the Campbell thing, too. where, the first time to kicking the field goal to go up 3 scores, like, I understand why people are frustrated with that. When your defense is totally stopped getting stops, and it's like, are we going to kick the field goal, take the points here, take the points.
Right. That means you have to make the kicks still.
Right. And tie it up here because, that's better for us. I don't know. Like, I feel like, one, I can't be on the side of saying Sirianni in the Super Bowl last year got conservative and then sit here and rip Dan Campbell today. Like, there's one side to pick here, and for me, aggressive is the way I see it, especially given the way I saw a Super Bowl in this town. Like, for all the questionable decisions Peterson made that we point out those last 3 seasons, his aggressiveness won you a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it worked.
It worked.
It did. I know. It's an open-ended conversation, not just the analytics thing. What makes a good coach? 610-632-0975. The player we have to apologize to, or some of you have to apologize to. We'll get to that in a second. Let's go to Freddie and Horsham. Freddie, you're on the Fanatic.
Hey, guys. Love the show. First-time caller. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Freddie. What's up, man?
Hey, so I just wanted to real quick just touch on analytics and then talk about Nick Sirianni. I look at analytics the same way you guys look at it, where it's a tool, right? So, like, if it's 3rd and 3 and the Eagles are playing the Cowboys, like, the analytics might say, 65% of the time you run the ball here. Well, the defense is analytics too. And so now they're going to load up the box. But then I tell my quarterback, hey, if they load the box, you better check out to a bubble screen. It's chess. And both sides of the ball are going to have analytics. So they're just going to match.
I think it's also like, and look, this isn't just, I brought up Doug a few times. It may also be organizational beliefs and philosophy. I've told the story multiple times now about Doug Peterson winning a game on a short week in Lambeau against a superior Packers team. But they ran the football too much to Jeffrey Lurie's liking, and Lurie actually complained to Doug in the locker room. When the team was celebrating a win, he complained to Doug that they ran the football too much. The Packers were the worst ranked rushing defense in the league that year. Like, that, to me, that's backwards.
Right, and I think that's also the game our future Hall of Famer Jalen Reagor ran a punt back. So we also have to remember that one. But I also just wanted to say, Nick Sirianni, like, I hear everyone talking about him like he's going to be the CEO coach. And the one thing I heard everyone in sports radio cry about for the last couple months is how corny he is running down the sideline, yelling after the Kansas City game. I just don't think that he's a guy that's going to command respect, and I just don't buy it as CEO coach. But I'd love to be wrong. Like,
I'm with you. I would love to be wrong. I thought it was a mistake for them to bring him back. And thanks for the call, Freddie. I thought it was a mistake to bring back Nick Sirianni, but I would love to be wrong. Look, I'm cool with a CEO coach, a guy that's not calling plays offensively or defensively. But that means Nick Sirianni has to really button up a lot of things, right? Time of possession's got to be a big deal. Time management's got to be a big deal. Personnel in the field's got to be a big deal. Hiring the right coaches is a big deal, if that's even his say anymore, right? We don't really know. And then the stuff leading up to game day. And if times are tough in a locker room, making sure that everybody's still together. This was the first time in his 3-year career as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles where you started getting leaks. I love the fact that the Eagles were 14-3 2 years ago. When it came to this, and I root for success of the team, not drama, but it made this job boring when it came to talking Eagles, right? Like, there was no juicy topic. There was none. It was celebrating victories every single week. As a fan, that's great. Come Tuesday, Wednesday, you're like, all right, what are the Sixers up to, right? And so for the first time in his career, stuff started coming out of the locker room. And as great as that may have been for content purposes, you also saw the Eagles go from 10-1 to 11-6 and getting embarrassed by the Bucs. And Nick Sirianni needs to button that up this year. And when you're already on the hot seat going into a season, which is why I did not think he should have remained as head coach, the second things start looking bad, bet your ass there's going to be more leaks. Right? Like, do you think if the Eagles start the season 2-2, but man, they lucked out one game, they should be 1-3, you don't think something's going to come out of the locker room that early on in the season?
I'm not even worried about the beginning of the season. I'm still waiting for the bombshells to drop about the end of this season.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to just include guys that are on their way out. Like, I'm sure we're going to hear about what it was really like there at some point over this offseason. We played the Charles Davis ominous, somebody's going to write the story. Somebody's going to write the story. The story's going to be written. Someone's going to get that story for you.
Right.
And it's like, oh, what story?
Waiting for that story,
But
yeah.
I think we all are. Like, I think, and that's a credit to the beat reporters we have in town, because every time where things take a turn with this team, the investigating and the digging with this team
Somebody finds
is tremendous.
it. Yeah, somebody's on it.
They'll find it. And I think that, to me, like, that's where this continues to go. You kept him, but before we even get the leaks in season, if things don't start well, the storm isn't quite over in what happened. Like, in terms of our public reception of this team and what we will be thinking about them, and the way, for a team that talked about the outside perception of them and talked about the outside noise, I don't think the outside noise is finished, because you have staff members
absolutely.
that are being, handed pink slips right now, and you
Taney,
have
Alex
players,
Taney, Nick's guy, got the boot.
which also CEO coach. If you have to purge your coaching staff like this, just a year after the Super Bowl, you're hiring the right people.
Well, yeah, it's a great question. It's a question that we'll find out as the season continues. All right, a lot of you owe Joel Embiid an apology. Joel Embiid didn't play again last night. So many people were upset about Saturday. I was bummed out, right? People were angry at Joel Embiid. We talked about context, right? So what's the conversation now? Now that you found out he missed another game yesterday. And then there's Ramona Shelburne said that Embiid wanted to play, but he couldn't even jump. So the team was the reason why he didn't play. Now, could that be a team-driven report? I don't know. But all I'm saying is Joel Embiid might actually be legitimately hurt right now. And so many people, he's ducking the Nuggets and Jokic in Denver again. And then he missed the game yesterday. And one of the tweets I saw last night that it just made me laugh because it's comical at this point was, damn, Joel Embiid missing tonight's game just to make it look more reasonable that he missed the other night. Like, come on, guys.
No, he was ducking Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't want that matchup.
Like, what is the relationship with Joel Embiid in this city?
Toxic.
That's a great word for it. I would love to hear from you at 610-632-0975. We got Jeff McClain coming up at 11:30. We're having the conversation about what makes a good coach in sports. And it can go across all sports, because I don't think a coach, Ted Lasso's a great story and all. I don't think a football coach could be a great soccer coach, right? Like, I don't think the messaging is the same across all sports, right? I think being a football coach in terms of the tough conversations is a little bit more different than a baseball coach or a manager, because it's 162 games. It's a longer season. You have to be able to handle that longer season better than the sprint that is in the NFL, right? What makes a good coach in each respective sport? Is Nick Sirianni that good coach? Is Rob Thompson that good manager? Is Nick Nurse that good coach? Is John Tortorella that good coach? We'd love to have that conversation. But when it comes to Joel Embiid, what is your relationship? Maybe I should ask, because I think I have a good one. If I see Joe, I go, what's up, man? Playing good basketball out there. Keep it up. But I know for a lot of other people, they don't like him, even though he's one of the best Sixers of all time. What is your relationship with Joel Embiid? Would love to hear from you. 610-632-0975, because a lot of you now owe him an apology for saying that he ducked out of Jokic, didn't want to play in Denver. Oh, it's been since 2019, blah, 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 blah. You didn't take into the context that he was hurt in 2019 and 2020. And now he misses his second straight game, and he could miss tonight. We'll find out later. But he's now missed 2 straight games. So, don't you owe an apology for all the crap that you spewed? I'm just saying. I'm being honest with you. I'm Andrew Salchunas. It's the Midday Show right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
way home this afternoon. The best show ever starting at 2. Now more with Andrew Salchunas on 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
It's 11:18 on this Tuesday morning. 97.5 The Fanatic, 11 o'clock hour, brought to us by Golden Nugget Jewelers. That's where Philly gets engaged. Jeff McClain of the Inquirer and Inquirer.com will be joining us coming up at 11:30. He's actually down at the Senior Bowl, so we'll get into some Senior Bowl conversation. Obviously, some players that the Eagles will probably keep a close eye on going to this draft, what the direction of the draft may be. It's probably going to be a boring one in the first round where it's going to be offensive or defensive linemen, but that's the way the Eagles have been doing it for 20-plus years, and the Eagles have been pretty damn successful, and so that's probably what the direction will be. Jeff also did the annual Stay or Go interactive article on the Inquirer.com that I suggest you participate in because it was a good, fun time for Ray and I on the show yesterday because we're football guys. This is fun, and this is what we do for fun: is Stay or Go roster conversations.
Right, you got to break down the 69-man roster.
Absolutely, you have to. And some of the guys that he had not coming back, Jason Kelce was one of them. I imagine it's because of retirement and not just because he wants Jason Kelce to leave. He did not have Fletcher Cox coming back, and he didn't have Avonte Maddox coming back. I thought that was the biggest one, which I understand why, because availability is the best ability, or best ability is availability. But I was actually surprised to see it, right? Because he is good when healthy. It doesn't happen all that often. So we'll have that conversation with Jeff coming up at 11:30. We'll also talk about this, what makes a good football coach, because he's been covering the Eagles for a long time. He's been covering the NFL for a long time. Before we get back to the phones, by the way, what we're talking about today, what makes a good coach in sports, because I feel like it changes every single year. What do you believe makes a good coach in sports? Because one year they could be great, like Nick Sirianni. The next year they could be on their way out, according to a lot of Eagles fans, right? He could have been on the hot seat. I did not want him back. So what makes a good coach? The relationship with analytics, because of the tweet from Mike Florio yesterday. Coach told me earlier today that analytics was just a way for people who never would have gotten jobs in football to get jobs in football. To understand that is to understand why they get so defensive whenever anyone questions analytics. So we have that conversation, the relationship between sport and analytics, the analytic person versus the non-analytics person, understanding what's a tool and what's not. And what is your relationship with Joel Embiid? Because Joel Embiid missed again yesterday due to injury. He got crushed by Sixers fans for not playing Saturday, right? I read you the email from Daniel, who I appreciate his service, and I appreciate him listening. He's probably listening right now. He actually emailed me back afterward, and we had a nice conversation. But Daniel called Embiid a coward for not playing on Saturday. Well, now that we know that he didn't play yesterday and might not play tonight, and Ray, you told me during the break, and we'll play Ramona Shelburne's clip later on this hour, she said that he shouldn't have even played against the Pacers, according to what we now know. Well, if that's the case, then don't you owe him an apology for calling him a coward? Don't you owe him an apology for saying he's ducking Denver, doesn't want to play in the altitude? Now the Philly collector checks in. The relationship with Embiid is, he dropped 70 on the Spurs. But we want to make it past the second round. This is a basketball city that's feigning for an actual run. I do not care how many MVPs he wins. That's great. We want playoff success. I get that. But for you to have playoff success, it's with Embiid. I've said this a million times. You trade Joel Embiid just to blow it up. It's going to be dark days in Philadelphia basketball. You talk about how this is a basketball city. Okay, get rid of Embiid. Now what? You're screwed. It's done. You're going to go into another process. And I know there are people that are weird and just love the idea of doing it again. No, I don't want to go back to that. I want to try to do whatever I can with the assets that I have here now. And that asset, one of those assets, is the MVP. So what is your relationship with Joel Embiid? Ray gave a great answer in terms of a lot of people's relationship, not his, not mine, but a lot of people's relationship in the city with Embiid. The word toxic. Sometimes I think it's worse than toxic. Sometimes, I don't even think people celebrate. There were people that didn't even celebrate 70 points the other night.
Yeah, I was just thinking that a lot of people, the highest of highs, they'll be there for it. They'll be like, oh, no, actually, I don't like Embiid. And then they'll celebrate the Embiid, then they'll leave, and they'll come back. And, Yeah, that would be toxic. I don't even know what word I would use for the people that
Hate. Haters.
hate.
Haters, period.
Well, yeah,
End
I
of
mean,
story.
there are the haters. I think some people also have gotten apathetic to
That's another one.
just what's going on with the Sixers. There's the idea of apathy until the second round, and then honestly, I think that's just hating. I can't really excuse the apathetic. I don't.
Look,
I don't understand you.
He did disappear in the final 5 minutes of Game 6.
He did.
I will never forgive him for that. Everybody wants to blame Harden. Everyone wants to blame Doc. Look, I blame the MVP not going up and saying, "Give me the freaking ball."
Yeah,
but
absolutely. I mean,
I want him to have the ball because he's the best player on the team, and I know that if he's not here, they're screwed.
Right, and that's part of all of this, and also
that's a good friend. That's a good friend relationship. When you tell him during the tough times, when you tell him how you truly feel, it's good. Yeah, me and Joe basically best friends, a couple of dads, like me and Rocco.
Yeah, well, you and Joe haven't yet bonded over your fatherhood, And I also saw the video of Rocco coming over to the table. I got to be honest with you. I think you.
I was far away.
Yeah. Bob Ranks is.
No, we made eye connection.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that wasn't on the tape.
I
Yeah,
made him.
sorry.
I made him
I didn't
blush.
get the all 22.
I made him blush when I brought up the process. Like,
okay, all right.
We have our own relationship.
Let's relax on that one. But with when we're talking about like Joel and all this stuff, I find it weird. Everyone's I don't care how many MVPs he wins. He's not winning MVP this year. He's got like 5 games left to miss and like half the season. I don't think he's going to make it in terms of the games played, which is going to be sad given the dominance we've seen this season. That it's not going to be recognized.
One of the best seasons in a while.
But ultimately, like he's not playing because there is a greater goal at hand.
Right, and he said that after his 70-point performance.
Right,
and yet people still don't.
Yeah, but we'll just ignore that.
Before we get to the phones, we got Jeff McClain coming up at 11:30. By the way, yesterday, Twitter was incredible yesterday for many reasons. Did you see the Elmo tweet?
Yes.
Incredible. So if you're not active on social media, you missed out on a big day. So Elmo, like the Sesame Street character, just put out a tweet yesterday. Elmo is checking in. How is everybody doing? And the tweets just blew up. Comedy, pure comedy, and pure sadness at the same time. Of like, man, I hope that person's doing okay. The very first response. Okay, this is Elmo, right? Like, I'm in the Elmo phase with Cooper, right? The contrarian responds to Elmo. Every morning, I cannot wait to go back to sleep. Every Monday, I cannot wait for Friday to come. Every single day and every single week the rest of my life. It's the first response to Elmo. It was buzzing yesterday. The D-line coach that the Eagles hired, Clint Hurt, just incredible content based off of Clint Hurt. If you don't know who Clint Hurt is, 2 T's, just Google image him. You'll understand why social media was on fire when the Eagles hired him as defensive lines coach. First person I thought of was the guy who owned the shop in Elf, who was also, believe it or not, me and Anthony would go back and forth about this movie that he refused to watch. He was an offensive lineman in The Replacements. I don't know if did you ever see The Replacements?
I don't think I did.
Watch it. It's funny.
Yeah.
He was an offensive lineman in The Replacements. So, I could see that connection there. Lastly, the first patient got the Neuralink, the Elon Musk chip placed in their brain. Now, some of it is to try to get more information on neurological disorders, which I think is actually great. Man, I'm not doing anything like that. Get the hell out of here. I'm not putting no chips in me. Come on.
No comment. No comment. I'm not walking down this path.
When I saw that we got the first one, I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yep, I saw that and I said, I know I'm just scrolling. I'm scrolling by. I want the next Clint Hurt meme on my timeline. I want to see the next person's response to Elmo. Yes. I was not touching that. Not touching that Elon Musk conversation with a 10-foot pole.
You're not interested to see what happens when he flips the switch on this person? Let's go to Nick in Lawrenceville. Nick, you're on the Fanatic.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
What's up, dude?
I'm very interested in the conversation that you guys are having with what makes a good coach. So yesterday I was listening to Tyrone and The Best Show Ever. They were kind of talking about the same thing, really.
Oh, okay.
So like what makes a good coach, if you look at, Sirianni versus Brandon Staley. And the reason why I'm bringing up Brandon Staley is because for me, I'm a Charger fan. So
That's right.
I already know what Brandon Staley is. I already know what he's done. You know, to me, Brandon Staley wasn't a good coach, you know, and he gambled a lot.
Oh, yeah, he did.
So my thing is there's a separation between a whole lot of separation between, you know, Sirianni and Brandon Staley. Sirianni, we already know he gambles. He likes to go for the analytics. But for me, when you think of the analytically, you know, sometimes that can come back and bite you. Sometimes it doesn't, depending on, you know, how they do it. So like when they do the tush push, right? 90% of the time it works out, you know, for like all these other teams, like, you know, like I just said, I'm a Charger fan. Like when we do the tush push, it doesn't work out.
Right.
So you can look at it that way. And I don't like, for example, right, if you watch college football, right, when do we ever criticize, you know, Nick Saban? Never, right? Because he's always he's almost like a Belichick when it comes to, you know, putting his players in the best position to win.
Oh, it's also different. It's recruiting, and he's always,
right.
you know, he's
right.
the OG with that.
Right. So I guess you can consider, you know, Sirianni kind of like, you know, a CEO coach in that form because, you know, to me, Saban is like a CEO coach in his own right. You know, because
look, the only reason why I bring up Staley, it's not because I think that they're the same coach. I think it's a similar situation where I thought Staley should have gone last year. They tried recreating the roster with the new OC, new DC, and if it doesn't work, well, then you're gonna have to go back to square one. And I was not too keen on bringing Sirianni back because of that situation. I appreciate the call, Nick. I appreciate your perspective as a Chargers fan, but. You know, he's back, and so we'll see how this plays out going into this season with what we believe is a new role when he says he takes a step back from the offense, and we'll see how Kellen Moore, you know, changes the offense a little bit. But for more Eagles conversation, let's head to the Comcast Business Hotline from the Inquirer.com, live from Mobile, Alabama. That's Jeff McClain. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Hey, Andrew, what's up?
So what's going on down in Mobile? Before we get into more about the the Eagles conversation, you're at the Senior Bowl. Who are some of the guys that you're keeping a close eye on down there?
I don't really start thinking about the draft just yet.
You're not doing your McClain mock draft 1.0 yet?
No, most definitely not. I mean,
this is why I respect you.
Yeah, well, I'm down here more just to talk to the team and find out what's going on with the team right now. Obviously, we're watching practices happening right now, so can't help but notice some guys. But yeah, that's kind of like last on my list of why I'm down here.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So. You know, yesterday we went through your stay or go, which I think it's always fun. It's like it's an interactive story that a lot of people can go to the Inquirer.com to do. And one name that really stood out to me that you had not coming back was Avonte Maddox. Can you dive into that for me?
Well, I mean, I think that his play and the amount of injuries that he's had over the last several years doesn't really guarantee him anything. And he's going into the last year of his contract, and it kind of jumps significantly. And my guess is that they're not going to want to pay him that amount of money. Now, he could just restructure it, and they offer him a pay cut and say, hey, we either release you or you take the pay cut. And that's something that could bring him back. I mean, they obviously like Avonte. They've been able to trust him in that spot for a long time. But, as I mentioned, I mean, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it's like in the 30s games that he's missed an injury or close to it over his career. And it's not like we're talking about a long-time veteran here. And, we saw, them have to move various guys into that spot. Some young guys, maybe Eli Ricks is someone they like in the slot permanently. So they have young cornerbacks. Maybe if I don't think this is probably likely because I had him going too, James Bradbury. I think it's hard to bring him back, but maybe you trust him a little more in the slot than you do on the outside. And then obviously there's a bumper crop of cornerbacks too coming out of the draft, and so yeah, I had Avonte, maybe them moving on from him.
Now, two other names, Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox. Part of it, my guess would be because of your belief that Kelsey might be retiring, or is there a reason why you would not bring them back? Can you talk on both Kelsey and Cox?
So so the basic premise of the stay and go thing is not like my opinion or anything.
Right.
I think how I think it's going to play out. I mean, and I still think that Jason is probably leaning retirement. Obviously, he's going to take some time and sit back and think about it. So that's basically most of my reasoning for that. And the same applies to Fletcher Cox. He has not said anything, but other players have. And from what I'm hearing kind of behind the scenes, that he's probably leaning towards retirement as well.
Okay. Now, the Eagles made their hiring with the coordinators of Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. Would love to get your opinion on both of them.
Well, I mean, they got experienced guys. I mean, like, Vic Fangio obviously has a coordinator in the league for decades. His record, he's had some very good defenses in San Francisco. He was able to have the top-ranked defense in terms of DVOA for the Bears, but I think the third year that he was there as defensive coordinator. He's had some subpar years in terms of the numbers. I mean, there's obviously various reasons why that may have been the case. But, this is a scheme that they've been running now for 3 years. And then they wanted to get the guy who created the scheme last offseason, but the whole Jonathan Gannon situation led them to miss out on Vic, who went to the Dolphins. He and the Dolphins parted ways this offseason. Some of it had to do, I think, with, we're hearing, and I talked to even some people here, we're hearing, like he wasn't getting along with some of his players. And then I think there was a report from Sports Illustrated that, he was basically the only voice in the defensive meetings when it was, when everything was being presented to the entire team, and some of that rubbed some of the assistants the wrong way. And, Vic at 65 has, obviously earned the right to have that kind of authority. And I think that's the type of authority he's going to have here in Philadelphia. They want to have basically, a head coach of the defense. And I think they're going to get that with Vic. On the offensive side, Kellen Moore, I mean, he's got 5 years of offensive coordinator experience. He, again, has had some really productive offenses in Dallas. He had a few, I guess I would say not subpar, but, down years from the highs that he had experienced, and that led to them moving on from him last offseason. Mike McCarthy took over play calling. They got better in the regular season, but it was the same old song in the postseason for the Cowboys. And, he did well in Los Angeles for the Chargers. But, you had injuries to quarterback Justin Herbert. You had Mike Williams was out for most of the season. So, you can look at that and say, the reason why they weren't as explosive on offense is because of injuries in San Diego. But, I think they're getting, I was surprised they moved this quick. I thought they would talk to some more guys to kind of they usually like to use these interviews as an opportunity to kind of hear out and learn about maybe some other alternative ways of looking at offenses. But my guess is they had these guys pegged, from the start. Definitely Vic. And Kellen, he was definitely probably one of a handful of guys that they wanted. They talked to him. They already interviewed him 3 years ago for the head coaching job that Nick Sirianni got. So they knew him a little bit. So I think both hires make sense. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how much of the scheme will be, at least offensively, be Kellen's, and how much will be Nick's.
Right.
But I'd say on the surface, both hires make sense.
Now that things are sort of settling down, right? The press conferences happen, locker rooms are cleaned out. You have the DC, you have the OC. Obviously, the Eagles are still hiring some, position coaches and skilled position coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Has things settled down relationship-wise? Last time I had you on, you mentioned Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Their relationship may need to be nurtured a little bit during the offseason. Has stuff started to settle down a little bit for guys like A.J. Brown, who was obviously very emotional, very upset, didn't play in the playoff game? Has things settled down, or is there still stuff lurking around right now with this team?
I mean, it's tough for me to say. We're out of the building, and really, honestly, all the players are out of the building. So I don't think there's really anything that you can even report at that point. I'm sure at some point, Nick and Jalen have to, get together. Jalen spent a lot of last off season working at the NovaCare. So maybe he's still doing that now. A lot of these guys, once the football season's over, they get away, they take a break. We just found out today that Jalen Hurts is going to play in the Pro Bowl as an alternate. He's jumping up into the vacant spot, I think, of Brock Purdy, I believe. And then, AJ's not going to the Pro Bowl because he still has that injury. He's going to sit that one out. But, look, that's an important dynamic, the head coach and the quarterback. But I think now with Kellen coming in and it being probably more of his scheme, that'll probably be a little more of a buffer, shall we say, in between Jalen and Nick. And maybe that's a good thing sometimes to have if it wasn't an ideal relationship by the end of the season. I'm not saying that these guys are hating on each other as any discord, but just the feeling that I got, and obviously being around a team a fair amount, it was bad on many fronts for this team. If you lose 6 of your last 7.
Now, Jeff, before I let you go, we're having an open-ended conversation on the show today. So this is a pretty open-ended answer, but to the best of your ability, because you've been covering the Eagles for a long time, you've been covering the NFL for a long time. What do you think makes a good head coach in the NFL? Because it seems like you can be the best head coach in the NFL one year, like Nick Sirianni was claimed last year, and then should be fired 1 year later. Dan Campbell, great head coach of the Lions, makes maybe a questionable decision. They lose the NFC Championship game. Now he should be fired, right? So what do you believe makes a good head coach in the NFL?
Well, I think they all have to be, the good ones all have to be kind of a CEO. They have to be someone who can stand up in front of the room and just command the room and have guys believe in him and want to play for him. I think that is first and foremost what you need from a head coach. And Nick, in theory, is still going to be that guy. Now, again, there's also, you have to be a good communicator. You have to be empathetic to your players, all that. Be able to build a culture that filters down from the top to the bottom. And that kind of that's all encompassed in being kind of like the CEO head coach. And then, you have to have good schemes. That's pretty obvious. And it doesn't have to necessarily be your scheme. It can be the team scheme, or it can be on the opposite side of the ball that you typically work upon, the scheme of that coordinator, in this case, Vic Fangio. And then, of course, in Nick's case now, it's not going to be, I think, 100% like his scheme. Not that it was ever 100% his scheme, but a lot of it was foundationally what Nick brought to the Eagles. But he's going to have to be able to, allow Kellen Moore to do, run his scheme and have the influence that I guess you need to have as a head coach. Because if you're not involved enough in, let's say in Nick's case, obviously he's an offensive-minded head coach. If he's not involved enough, then the players will see that, and then that becomes an issue. But Nick's still going to be obviously part of the game management. That's a big part of the game, as you mentioned with Dan Campbell. He kind of falls under that category as well. And Nick, 7 games into his tenure as head coach, realized that he couldn't do both play calling and game management, and we've seen other coaches give that up and have success. But that is definitely a big part of being a head coach, and certainly on game days as well.
Jeff, listen, enjoy yourself down in Mobile. We'll be following you along as you get to talk to some of the brass of the Eagles. Who is down there? Howie, I imagine. Jeffrey, I'm sure, is down there. Jeffrey's son.
No, I think they're gonna go light this year. I know Nick's not coming. I don't believe Howie's coming.
Wow.
So they have obviously scouts and they're back in Philly. Nick's got to get that staff together. Got to start talking about moving forward this team in terms of what they're
is Julian Lurie down there? I know he's been going down there the last couple of years, right?
He came 2 years ago.
Okay.
I have not seen him. My guess is probably not. Jeffrey will usually come down maybe for a bit if the entire team, if the head coach and the GM come down. But my guess is neither Howie and Nick I definitely know that Nick's not coming down.
Okay. Well, Jeff, we'll be following you along, man. We appreciate all the times you've come on this station throughout the season as the offseason continues. And we'll be following you along. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks for having me.
There is Jeff McClain on the Inquirer, inquirer.com. Are the Eagles punting away the draft? They're not down to the Senior Bowl? Are they not football guys?
6-1-0.
Is that what we're learning? Has Howie are they taking a step back? Is that what we're learning? Jeffrey Lurie, toward the end of the season, was part of player personnel stuff. Is he now taking a step back? 6-1-0.
He's got that yacht,
He's got the yacht, yeah, but he couldn't take the yacht to Mobile? Yeah, you go down the coast.
Mobile on the coast?
Oh, you go down the coast, go toward the Gulf.
Wow, what, is he going to Uber from the coast to...
He's a billionaire. He can pay for that Uber.
A limo? No.
He's a billionaire. He can do whatever the hell he wants. He can hire a helicopter pilot. He could get one of those fan boats.
No disrespect
the ones from Waterboy.
No disrespect to our Alabama listening audience. He's a billionaire. Going down to Alabama. Season just ended.
Tell that to Tom's face.
No.
Tom will beat your ass up so fast.
I'm sure he would.
Oh, man. 610-632-0975, the number to climb in to talk about all the stuff we got going on What makes a good coach in your eyes in any sport? Obviously, a lot of this has to do with the NFL because Nick Sirianni is back, and last year he was the best thing since sliced bread, and now he shouldn't be a head coach. And I'm guilty of doing that. I'm guilty of wanting him to be fired because of how things played out. So what makes a good coach in sports, respective sports, because I do think it's a little bit different elsewhere. Also, coming up next, I told you about Joel Embiid not playing yesterday and how a lot of you owe him an apology, even though you're cowards and you won't do it because you ripped him for not playing Saturday night. You ripped him for scoring 70 points, but when he misses yesterday, and there's a report that he should not have played against the Pacers, but, it's all right. You guys are in your feelings when it comes to Embiid. There was a former Sixer that did play yesterday. There was also a former Sixers coach that coached yesterday. I'll give you some updates on them next, right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Tough night in Portland. I'm Ray Dunn. This update is brought to you by Compassion International. Drought, war, and rising food prices have devastated families in poverty. $50 provides a food kit to feed family for a month. Just text the word radio to 97646. The 76ers fell to the Portland Trail Blazers 130-104 last night. Once again, without Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, 76ers lose to a Trailblazers team who entered the evening 20 games under 500. Sixers started out leading the game by 8 points after the first quarter, but outscored by 34 points in the next 3 quarters. Former Sixer Jeremy Grant scored 27 points to lead all scorers in the win for the Blazers. 76ers return to action tonight at 10 o'clock against the Golden State Warriors. Catch that live call right here on 97.5 The Fanatic. The Eagles reportedly made a few hires to their defensive staff. Eagles hired former Seahawks defensive coordinator Clint Hurt to be their defensive line.
and he was asked, like, how are you going to figure this out? He basically made a comment, and I'm paraphrasing here because it's been 5 years, 6 years, that I'm going to, roll the ball out there and let them try to figure it out, like, see where they play. He's admitting to you, like, yeah, I'm just going to roll the ball out there, see what happens. That could, they won 51 games that year. Like, when you have talent, good for you, Doc. 16 straight seasons of winning basketball. Look at did he ever? Did he win with the process Sixers?
Yeah, I guess he gets credit. I'm trying to think that Clippers team with Tobias before. I think he was there for that. So maybe we do give him credit for props, maybe maximizing because there were and to the coaching credit. Sometimes those games where we talk about no Embiid, or we talk about there were games where it's like, oh wow, this team played above its head with Doc Rivers. But okay, so he was good at getting some of those guys in position to succeed. Just the question of when it came to the big moments over the last 15 years, where have you been? And how have you let so many leads slip from your fingertips? At some point, common denominator here is
he's the only
guy
guy with multiple through on series blown leads. Only guy.
Yeah.
In the history of the NBA.
You just need one more. Well, win one of the last 3.
And it's been, 3 times now? 4 times now? Come on, man.
I think he's got the worst record in NBA history in closeout.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's a lock. Yeah, that's a lock. I don't think I've even
clinching games.
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to just go with that as a fact. I'm not even going to look it up.
And there were, listen, Doc Rivers got the job, and my entire timeline was people slandering Doc Rivers.
Talking about Doc Rivers as they should. All right, coming up next, so we'll continue the conversation about what makes a good coach in sports. And I want to hear from you at 610-632-0975. Also, your personal relationship with Joel Embiid. As Ray said, a lot of people in Philadelphia seem to have a toxic relationship with Joel Embiid. But Ray, Mr. Producer that he is, also told me about something awesome that I would love to get into. So Awful Announcing, which is a great website. They put out an article of it was the 5 storylines we're going to get sick of going into the Super Bowl. Because we got 2 weeks of it, man. So we'll go through that. We'll see what we agree and what we disagree with. And speaking of the Super Bowl, talk about good coach, bad coach. How about legendary coach Andy Reid? Get into a conversation about him next, right here on 97.5 The Fanatic. Happy Super Bowl from FanDuel in partnership with Valley Forge, America's #1 sports book. Super Bowl Sunday. Speaking of that, it's all about the best seat on the couch, your favorite snacks, placing some super bets. Can't wait for the good food. Can't wait for the good beer. And, of course, can't wait to hit on a lot of bets so that I can make Christy happy. So when she goes, man, you like to have fun with this. I go, yeah, I have fun when I win. FanDuel has so many ways for you to win at the end of the season with a win, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how many bets you make. Bet on who will win Super Bowl 58. Plus, FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and a whole lot more. There's going to be a lot of the fun prop bets as well. New customers join today and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/Fanatic to sign up, and I suggest you to do that before the Super Bowl so that you have $200 of bonus bets to mess around with come Super Bowl Sunday. That's FanDuel.com/Fanatic and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You got to be 21 plus and present in PA. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. you have to give Steve Spagnuolo a lot of credit because there's not as much attention spent on that defense there. I know they have some young players that they drafted a few years ago, but I don't see how Andy Reid isn't the prototype.
Oh, yeah. Overall, I mean, we talk about stability, building it out. But again, part of it comes back to, hey, he identified Patrick Mahomes. Like that, being able to get yourself in a position to get Mahomes is a big piece of the conversation with Andy Reid. And, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but we talk about personnel. This is the team that, did draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor, did draft Mecole Hardman over DK Metcalf. Like, they've made their mistakes. It's washed away by the fact you drafted Patrick Mahomes, and you are, again, to the credit of Andy Reid, the offensive genius you are that puts him in a position to succeed. And then, of course, he does his thing. He puts his magic touch on everything, and you end up winning. And, again, Spags did his thing this year with that defense.
Right. It just shows you, man, how important the quarterback is.
And that relationship and putting them in a position to succeed.
Well, and Jeff didn't back down from the Hurts and Sirianni thing.
No.
He didn't back down from the fact that relationship needs to be fixed during this offseason. And, you talk about the story, right? That story that might drop. I mean, is that it? Is there a beef between the two of them? And if that's the case, then why would you bring them back? Full circle, here we are again. Obviously, I love the Nick Foles story. Like, that's great. But it's sustainability at quarterback, man. I mean, every once in a while, another team's going to win a Super Bowl. I get that. But, dude, I mean, look at the Chiefs, what they do every year. Look at what the Patriots did every single year. The 1 year Brady goes to the Bucs, they win. It's crazy how if you have a good quarterback, you're in a great spot every single year. And I know that's no shock. I know it's no shock, but, like, that's why teams should probably move on from quarterbacks quicker than they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's that tandem. It's having that head coach and quarterback that work together, work well together. It's building the sustainability of your coaching staff where, again, we see the way they're purging out this coaching staff right now. It seems like, there's a lot of need for change in NovaCare. That's an issue for sustainability of, okay, now you're bringing in new guys. Who was on this staff a year ago, and where did that contribute to the shortcomings? Where was the coaching level this year versus in previous years? And I think that's part of Sirianni. And then on top of having the head coach quarterback in place, having the sustainability, the ability to bring in coaches, having the contacts to bring in coaches that are going to keep things going like that. Then it goes to, okay, what does your head coach do at an exceptional level? And I think those are the three things, like when we talk about what builds sustainability in the NFL, right there. I mean, what your head coach does well, maximizing that. What your quarterback does well, maximizing that with the relationship they have with the head coach or whoever the offensive mind is, and then being able to build up a staff that, one, is sustainable and having the context to bring in good people.
Do you think Andy's like, Spags, I'm so sorry that nobody's interviewing you. And then as soon as he walks out of the room, he's like, oh, thank God.
I think he is quite thrilled. I think Spags is probably quite thrilled with where he's at.
Yeah,
he had his chance.
Unless he wants another chance.
Listen,
I mean, that guy keeps on winning, right? Like, he's a part of that, right?
Yeah, he's a part of that.
So it's just, it's
hey,
fascinating.
The defense is your thing, man. Like, I'll continue to praise you at press conferences.
Yep. Yeah.
You could take the ring. You could take, I don't know how much they're paying you, but I'm sure it's
hopefully another ring, by the way, because
yeah,
screw the Niners.
Please.
Now, before we get back to the phones, Elmo has followed up.
Oh.
So if you're just tuning in, Elmo, I talked about it earlier yesterday. Twitter was incredible yesterday between the Eagles hiring Clint Hurt, gigantic defensive line coach, the chip, the first Elon Musk chip implanted in the brain of a human being. Oh, boy. And Elmo asking how everyone's doing. And Twitter just being incredible. Elmo has since tweeted, wow, Elmo is glad he asked. Elmo learned that it is important to ask a friend how they are doing. Elmo will check in again soon, friends. Elmo loves you. # emotional well-being. Whoever runs the Elmo account deserves a raise.
I mean, yeah, it deserves a raise. Great engagement. I don't feel any better. Elmo just asked how I was doing. It's not helping me.
Come on, man. It's great.
Help me out, Elmo.
Elmo loves you. That's what it says in the tweet. Let's go to Carlos in Phillipsburg. What's up, Carlos?
Hey, how you guys doing today?
How you doing, Carlos?
So real quick, I'll comment on the coaching and then my relationship with Joel Embiid.
Please.
So as far as coaching, I think a lot of times what we don't get to see behind the scenes is guys like Doc Rivers, and I really think Nick Sirianni falls into this category. They interview exceptionally well. And I think when they're in front of these billionaire owners and general managers, they just interview better than other candidates. And they keep getting hired. And I think you're going to see when Sirianni eventually gets fired from the Eagles, he's going to get hired somewhere else, and the same thing's going to happen. I think a lot of these guys, are just exceptional at interviewing. And they say the right things in the right way, in the right fashion. We all know Doc is not a game coach. He's a teacher.
Right. And he's good. And he's good at that. He is good at that. Like, I don't take that away from him.
No doubt about it. The guy earlier said he thought Patrick Beverly could be a coach. Patrick Beverly's a teacher. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a head coach. He might be a great teacher, but being a head coach is completely different.
Right.
And I just think with the coaching, too many of these coaches are good at interviewing, and they keep getting jobs because of that. In basketball, I think of the Van Gundy brothers. They sucked.
Right.
They were terrible.
Right. And then there's the question on the flip side, like, why does a guy like Eric Bieniemy not have a head coaching job yet? Right? Like what he did with Kansas City. Right. He might not interview well.
He may have the problem that Mark Jackson has. He rubs the front office the wrong way.
Maybe.
Mark Jackson was certainly a proven coach, and no one will give him a job because they don't like him.
Right.
And it's a well-known fact that he rubs people the wrong way. He's big into the religion. They don't know what to do with that.
Right.
And he rubs people the wrong way. So he's not coaching. He's on TV. He has to suffer through Van Gundy as a partner.
Right. Exactly.
But now, as far as Joel, I mean, listen, I hear you guys all the time, and you all think it's a toxic relationship. Listen, we're in Philadelphia. When in Philadelphia, we like a certain type of athlete. We like a guy like Allen Iverson. We like a guy that's all heart. Joel, Ben Simmons, and
don't put Embiid and Simmons in the same conversation.
Let me finish. And what was the quarterback that played for the Eagles? You were just talking about him. I can't even remember his name. I hate thinking of him.
Wentz.
Wentz. Yes. They fall into the category. There's a term amongst young people today. They say he's a goofy. Have you heard that term? He's a goofy.
Yeah, come on, man. He's not. He doesn't fall into the same category. Those guys, Carlos.
Hold on. Let me finish. Their personalities fall under that category as a goofy, quote unquote, a goofy. Embiid is a goofy.
How do you know? Have you talked to him?
No, just hear me out. He comes across as a goofy, and so in Philadelphia is like, listen, great. He scored 70 points. Great. There's no doubt in my mind he's the most talented big man we've seen in a long, long time. He's amazing. But in Philadelphia, we're like, okay, can you get to the final? That's what it really
right. And I understand that part, and I appreciate the call, Carlos. I do. I understand the part of, all right, enough is enough. Like, we get your grade. Can you get out of the second round? Can you win? I get that. I know he keeps on doing the whole hear me out thing, but he did just try to compare Joel Embiid to Ben Simmons and Carson Wentz, which is probably the most disrespectful thing I've ever heard said about Joel Embiid. More so than whatever Dr. J has ever said about him. Like, that, come on, man. You can't compare Embiid to a guy who has been kicked out of 3 teams in Carson Wentz, and then also a guy in Ben Simmons who, for whatever reason, can't get on the court. He mentioned, Philadelphians love guys with heart. Look, I understand Embiid misses games here and there because of injury. Oh, I'm sorry, the guy needs off-season surgery every single year, right? It's not his fault. He has a weak orbital bone, right? I don't think that's his fault. It's whatever God gave him, right? I just can't believe that I heard him compare him to Simmons and Wentz. If you want to do the whole look, I need success with my team. That's fine. I get it. But all I'm saying is you're not going to have success without him. And so I take the approach of enjoying having him while he's still here. And I'm hoping still here means throughout the rest of his career. And I understand if they fall short, you're going to go, what was that all for? Well, yeah, it's going to suck. It's been 40 years anyway. All right, what about the other 30 years in Sixers franchise history? I remember we brought up Barkley not that long ago. Like, I love Chuck. What did he win? Like, but we talk about him in nothing but positives. I don't hear anybody say anything negative about Charles Barkley. Ever. Now, is it because he's also a great character on TNT and, he used to do the hour-long hits with Mike here at the station, or 4-hour-long hits? Like, is that what it is? That he's very with the community? He was like, nicest guy. I remember when Charles Barkley came here when I was an intern, and then the next year said, "Oh, what's up, Andrew?" Like, what? I was an intern. Like, he must have some photographic memory if he can remember my name for whatever reason, right? But Embiid doesn't get anywhere near that kind of love. Now, is that because he's still playing and they haven't reached that level of success yet? And then if it doesn't ever reach it, will 10 years after his career come to an end? Is that when people will start liking him again? I don't know. Or there's the thought that maybe when Embiid goes, people still believe that they'll still be successful. We saw when Barkley left what happened. They went into the dark days. If Embiid goes, I'm telling you right now, they're not going to be successful.
No, it's an incredibly naive thought, and the thought that people continue to have with that, and it was an off-season thing. Well, and it was an emotional thing because there was a lot of people like the first 2 weeks, like that's when that train really took off. Was the first 2 weeks after they lose to the Celtics. It was like, no, get rid of this guy, build around Maxey, figure it out from there. And to me, like the appreciation of him will likely come after he's done because people will eventually back off of he's not playing anymore. Like you just appreciate the player you had. I think there'll still be people that hold out and hate because there's always going to be people that hold out and hate. It is interesting the continued comparisons. When we people draw Iverson and what about Allen Iverson versus him? Iverson, yeah, he was one. He got to the finals. Your big season of the last 40 years since that last title is Iverson taking you there in 01. And can't take that away from him. But it is really interesting that people just, blindly now, Iverson. Like, in the moment, were all those people enthralled at first with, Sideshow and other things that were going, like, Iverson was an incredibly talented player.
Absolutely.
And incredibly, influential in everything he brought to the game. But I don't think that everyone today that's, Iverson, that's
I'm sure there were some people back then that were like, it's time to go. Enough is enough.
Right. Your take on Iverson now is because he's a legend and he's not playing.
Right.
What was your take then on him versus your take now? Because I think some people, the way you attack Embiid.
As time goes on,
you'll find the next superstar and say, well, look, Embiid, what he went from when he, his foot was broken, he ended up finding his way onto the floor. He ended up becoming a dominant force. You'll use him to knock down the next star. The way some of you talk about Iverson now, I don't know if that's the way you talked about him then. And I can't go prove that. You know how old I was when that happened. But it just feels like some of like Charles Barkley, when he first got here. The way you talk about Embiid being out of shape when he was younger. Right. Like, I know some of you would have had the same thoughts.
You guys had takes. I'm sure there were takes back then.
And that's like, we continue to use the players of years ago to tear down the players of today and say, well, that's what Philadelphia loves. Right. No, that's what it loves right now because we've been removed from that time.
I love the right now in terms of the guy that's playing that's dropping 70 points in a game.
It's like, no, did you always appreciate what you had, or are you just appreciating it now because you can use that as an argument against what you have right now?
Great point, Ray. All right, so Awful Announcing did the 5 Super Bowl storylines you're sure to get sick of. All right, we'll go through these as the show continues, but I'll give the first one that they have here. Is Patrick Mahomes the GOAT? Here's the write-up. As it became clear that the Chiefs were about to secure a 4th trip to the Super Bowl in a 5-year span, I could already hear the debates about Patrick Mahomes' GOAT status forming. And sure enough, come Monday, ESPN's Get Up was already asking, is Patrick Mahomes about to pass Tom Brady in the GOAT discussion? I won't get sick of that. I won't get sick of it. We had the conversation yesterday. I appreciate greatness. It doesn't matter whether they're here or not. Like, if Patrick Mahomes was our quarterback, we'd be having that conversation every single day, right? I won't get tired of that. Will you get tired of it?
No, probably not. I mean, TV's off in here today, so I haven't looked. I've been able to get sick of storylines today. But no, I probably won't.
I think our lives are also different. We're not watching those shows. we're doing a show.
Yeah.
And we're not, because our team's on the Super Bowl, we're not having these conversations on a daily basis. Like, I can imagine if somebody's watching those screaming head shows every single day and they see that topic every day, it's just a different analyst that comes on to give their opinion.
I know what will bother me.
What will bother you?
Whenever Tom Brady checks in.
What if he says, you're now the new GOAT?
I won't buy it. It's gonna be when Tom Brady checks in. That'll be what bothers me.
But what if he checks in by saying, congratulations, you're the new GOAT?
He won't.
Or do you think that's going to be another Snoop Dogg thing where it's going to end up being an ad?
Could be. Listen, I was able to sniff out the Snoop Dogg ad right from the beginning.
Right away.
There was no way that guy was stopping smoking.
All right, so that's storyline number one. I don't think I'll get tired of it because I do appreciate greatness. I'll give you the other four as the show continues. Would love to hear from you. 610-632-0975 when it comes to what makes a good coach. And it seems like right now the prototype's got to be Andy Reid. Also, Valentine's Day scams. I'll explain more coming up next right here, 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Top night in Portland. I'm Ray Dunn. This update is brought to you by Lowe's. Shop the closed event now at Lowe's with big savings on the appliances you need now. Lowe's knows home improvement. Shop the closed event now.
1249, 97.5 The Fanatic. I'm Andrew Sal Tunis. Got to give a shout out to our man Tyrone Johnson. The best show ever. Every time I walked out there during the break, it's great seeing Tyrone and Ricky and Jen and Dylan. And every day there's treats out there. Sometimes it's like sour gummy worms. Sometimes it's, what else they have? They had the Starbursts. Little candies every once in a while. All right, it's nice. Today he walks in with the freaking charcuterie board, man. There's meats, cheeses, olives, and then like legit chocolate covered pretzels. Not just dipped in chocolate. It's like, these are like art. I almost don't want to eat one. M&Ms on them and everything. That's a nice man.
Oh yeah,
deserves credit.
It's fantastic. It is one of the things I look forward to in coming to work. There are a lot of things that happen throughout the work day. Them with the food, get a chance to eat a few sour gummies after a show. It's a strong move. It is also part of the reason why I joined the gym. So, give and the take with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's January 30th.
Hey, listen, I'm still going.
Are you still going? That's good.
No,
yeah, you've made it longer than a lot of people.
So I signed up 2 weeks into the new year,
okay,
knowing full well that everyone that signed up at the start of the year was already done. So this is like my
All right, so this
moment.
is your first 2 weeks. So do
Yes.
you continue into February is what we'll find out.
Yes, well, that, and also I have a looming decision on the Broad Street run.
Which yeah, that's right. That's a big one.
I remember last year, after the way my legs felt following the race, I was like, next year I'm going to get to the point where it's like, I got to do this again. And I need you guys to remind me how I feel right now. And I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, but if you train better.
If I train, that's the key there. The problem is it's never really the idea. It's always the process of going through it.
Look, I love the Philadelphia Marathon and the half marathon because of what it does for the city and the money they raise. They do stuff for the AARC, AACR, excuse me. All kinds of wonderful things that they do. So I did the half a couple of years ago. And so I'm in Manayunk, where's the best way to train? All right, Kelly Drive. So I just run back and forth Kelly Drive to the point where, half miles, 13.1. I did it in great time on Kelly Drive.
Sick brag.
But then you had to do, because I trained. I followed a legit program.
That's good. Yeah.
And then you do the actual race. And you're going uphill at mile 6, steep uphill. I go, how do you train for this? Unless you're literally going to run the actual course every single day.
You lived in Manayunk. What do you mean? How do you train for this?
You think I'm running up Green Lane?
Wouldn't hurt.
To add an extra mile to my run? No, I'm not doing that.
No, you train hills. Come on.
No.
You do a hill workout.
No, I thought the distance was the distance. That's all that matters.
No. What?
All right.
Come on. Listen, I am an absolute loser when it comes to the training type of thing. I had not run. When I ran Broad Street last year, I hadn't run 10 miles since I was 18.
Oh, that's good.
So, no,
right
it wasn't.
That's
why it felt the way it did afterwards. Oh, I'm an idiot when it comes to that, but I do remember what it was like to train like that. You got to run hills to prepare for hills. You lived in Manayunk. How do you not know whether...
Oh, do you think I wanted to run the hills after I was back after 13 miles?
No, you don't need to run 13 miles. You need to train a hill workout.
Wow, okay. You're Mr. Cardio over here.
I'm not Mr. Cardio. I'm just explaining. You're like, how could I have been ready for this? You live in Manayunk. You don't live on the Great Plains. It's not like they dropped you off at the Rocky Mountains after living in the Midwest.
No, but I went to the Rocky Steps, Ray.
Oh.
I did it.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick, before we get back to the conversation. Does the name Brad Idzik or Idzik ring a bell?
Not until that just popped up on my phone.
Yes, because you have notifications. See, I can't get anything by you because you're Mr. Noties. So, Brad Idzik or Idzik, I guess get ready to know the name, was just hired to be the Panthers offensive coordinator. Panthers have a new head coach. They have Dave Canales, who was the head coach or the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Idzik was the wide receivers coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you're wondering where I'm going at here. Ray, do you feel accomplished in life?
Well, we just did the Elmo tweet, right? Yeah, I feel accomplished in life, sure.
You got some time.
Yeah.
How old are you again?
Oh, dude, you're going to do this 23.
Oh, Jesus, I thought you were 25. Well, you got 9 years. You have plenty of time, dude. You're young.
Yes.
You have so much time. So, Brad Idzik is just 32 years old, man. And he's going to be the offensive coordinator. Now, I don't think age matters. If you're bright, you're bright. That's, and I'm sure Dave Canales, who was clearly a bright offensive mind with what he's been able to do over the last couple of years as an offensive coordinator, especially last year with Baker Mayfield. We saw that in the playoffs. He clearly thinks highly of this kid. Even though he's older than me, but child. Kid. He's 32 years old. He's an offensive coordinator in the NFL. That's crazy to me, man. Not that there's anything wrong with it. So I'm just kind of looking back at his bio. He obviously played college football. He played at Lehigh, and then he played at Wake for a couple of years. He played at Wake. Was that the Matt Rule year? When Wake beat Temple? When did Matt Rule leave?
He left after 16.
Oh, it was after 16? Okay, never mind.
Well, what year did he play at Wake?
11 to 14.
Yeah, because I think they play Week 15 or 16. One of those. Yeah, he just missed it, though.
So he played college football and then eventually got hired as the assistant wide receivers coach. Think about this meteoric rise. Assistant wide receivers coach with the Seahawks. 2019-2020. Also did it in 2022. In between 20 and 22, he was the offensive quality control and assistant quarterbacks coach in 2021. And then just 2 years later, the dude's an offensive coordinator with a former number one overall pick in Bryce Young. Man, that's crazy.
And just you wait. He'll be your Eagles head coach.
Well,
Howie Roseman's like, who would be grateful to have this job?
He's probably kicking himself, saying, "Damn it, should have fired Nick. We could have been the people that hired Brad Idzik. Yeah, we could have made him a puppet." All right, let's go back to the phones. And then we'll go to here. I'll give you one more. The 5 storylines you're going to be sure to get sick of, according to Awful Announcing. Number 1 was the Patrick Mahomes GOAT conversation. I don't think I'm going to get tired of that one. The second one, Mr. Irrelevant. Now, I said this yesterday. It's an awesome story. Awesome story. I just hate that it's with the 49ers. If this was the Lions, if this was the Packers, if this was not Dallas, if this was any team in the NFC other than an NFC squad, it would be an awesome story that I would not get tired of. The fact that he's with the 49ers, I'm going to hate it because I just hate that team.
Yeah, and I don't really want, because they're going to do, well, if Purdy wins, where does this ascend him to? And I really don't want
he's
to
already going to be in that conversation.
Right.
We went through the ESPN top 10 quarterbacks list going into this past season. He wasn't even in the honorable mentions.
I know.
He's in the top 10 next year.
In their list, yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's
win
more
or
where,
lose.
This is where it's going to bother me. Like that, this Brock Purdy is just going to bother me.
Of course.
The existence of his career is going to bother me.
It just sucks because it is an awesome story. Last pick in the draft, but it's because he's with the San Francisco 49ers it's going to bother me.
Yeah. I mean, it is a cool story if I remove all my biases and all my hatred. Yeah, cool story.
But then I remember of my biases and hatred.
Yeah, and that's why I'm tired.
So it is going to get
I've been tired of Brock Purdy since...
Oh, absolutely.
Since Brock Purdy kind of became...
Since they won a few games last year.
Yeah.
Because we hate the Niners.
Yeah, I imagine that there are some people out there that probably feel the way we feel about Brock Purdy about Nick Foles.
Probably.
Like they just hate the story. Like the story's cool, but they hate that he was the one that got Philadelphia over the hump.
I'll use Christy as an example. I guarantee you, if I told Christy his story, she'd be like, "I got to follow this kid."
Don't.
I'm not going to.
Don't.
I don't need that in my house. That might lead to divorce, and that's bad.
Yeah.
I don't want.
Well, listen, no one's rooting for that.
Thank you. There might be some people. I don't know. People might want the downfall of Andrew Salchunas.
That's pretty dark to think of.
I'm sure there's somebody out there that goes, "You know what? I want that kid to be miserable."
Wow.
Let's go.
What have you done to people in your life?
I talk sports for a living, and I say takes that people don't like sometimes. You know how people get.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
I'm called an idiot every day. Let's go to Michael and Yardley. Michael, you're on the Fanatic.
What's up, guys?
What's up, Coach Mike? How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. So I wanted to chime in on this conversation about what makes a good coach.
Cool.
And I think respect is a big thing, especially when you're around, like, a football locker room, a lot of macho guys. So that's why sometimes a former player would automatically get some type of, like, baseline level of respect. Like, oh, this guy's been through the ropes before. He was successful. I can look up his highlights, that type of thing. That goes a long way with players. Sometimes players' coach can get that just because, they're close to the players. But I got to say this. I knew that Hurts lost some type of respect for Sirianni, and I could see it in his face. I know there's this moment where, and I know you remember, Andrew, because you're observant, that we're in the Super Bowl.
And Nick Sirianni's pointing at the team to back up.
Oh, my goodness. He's smiling, like laughing, kind of like joking.
And Hurts pulls his arm down.
Hurts pulled his arm down like, come on, dude. This is the Super Bowl.
Now, I will say this. Hurts did smirk during it, too.
Yeah, he did. But I think that smirk was almost like a dummy slap that you'd.
But I get what you're saying. He's probably like, dude, this is the Super Bowl. Like, what are you doing, man? Like,
yeah. And for that to be the dynamic right there when things are going well, I can only imagine what the dynamic is when Hurts is like, this dude's game plan
especially, think about it this way, especially when it's usually the player that has that kind of attitude, right?
Exactly, and the coach is the one who's usually honing them in.
Right.
I can see in my head Andy Reid yelling and kind of being stern, even though Andy Reid's not like the yelling, mean type. I can see him being stern. With
he did it earlier this year when the Eagles played the Chiefs and Travis Kelce did something. It was like an after the play penalty, and Andy pulled him aside and reamed him out.
And then later on pats him on the butt like, hey, it's all good. You need that dynamic between coach and player, not the other way around. And when you have everything when everything's going well, you can afford to have a coach who's kind of silly, who kind of has that playful, aspect with the coach and the team and the players. But when things are not going well,
you have to be able to turn to them. And I don't think they could have turned to Nick Sirianni at any point. And that's one of the main reasons I didn't want to bring him back. And thanks for the call, Coach Mike. That's one of the main reasons I didn't want to bring him back. They're 10-1. They fall to 11-6. And I hear Fletcher Cox saying it was a bump in the road. That ain't no bump, man. That was a cliff that you fell off of. And when you have to turn to your leadership and you look at Sirianni, because ultimately that's who it is, even though everything's great and Sirianni's yelling, screw you, Chiefs fans, and all that kind of stuff, when times are tough, I need you to still be able to be the man that can handle that sideline. And I don't know if he ever did. Right? Things are great when you're winning, but when you're losing, that's one of the hardest parts of the job, and being able to rewrite the ship. And then I got to hear after the season's over that we got to bring in a new coordinator to bring in fresh ideas because our offense got stale. Well, it's your offense. You're the one who was putting together these game plans. And it was the same thing for 2 months. I didn't see any wrinkles. And if I'm a player, to Mike's point, and I'm Jalen Hurts, I'm going, man, come on. Like, this isn't working. Remember the line where Hurts himself said, you can't practice the same thing and expect different results? I wonder if that was a shot at Sirianni and the game plan, not just actual practice, not just the hour on the field. I'm talking about having the same game plan every single week and expecting different results. Every once in a while, I still get heated that Sirianni's back. I'm excited for this team. They're going to have a good roster. I'm excited for Kellen Moore. I'm excited for Vic Fangio. I'm excited for these things. But sometimes, every once in a while, I get heated that a guy that failed and watched the Titanic sink but didn't get the boats out there to help people, he just wanted to keep everybody on board with him. I can't be thrilled that he's back. It was a mistake. Now, the question about respect, I wish I had more time with Coach Mike. How do you gain that respect at the beginning? Like, Andy Reid will forever have respect, right? Like, because but you got to get it at the beginning at some point. Is it just as simple as owning the locker room? Like, is that like the first thing is own the locker room? I thought Sirianni with the flower speech was not going to get respect, right? Like, I thought there was going to be a play in the locker room that goes, what the hell is this guy talking about? Planting seeds. They bought into it. big time. Like, how do you gain that respect? That's not something that like you and I can answer. It's
Yeah, I mean, I
kind of
think
a rhetorical question.
it probably starts with you find who is the strongest voice in the room, and you start to work from there. Like, because I imagine the way they grabbed on when you talk about the flower speech. Think about some of the leaders that this organization had, and where Sirianni continues to drive
and those guys backed it up too, like Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson. They were all about it. Like, I remember and grabbing. Now this is an interesting tactic, right? I remember doing a show his first year. This was during camp. Like, he hadn't even coached the game yet, and he was wearing the Brandon Graham t-shirt. And Connor was producing me that day, and Connor was floored. And like, I was like, dude, what do you like? Why do you care, right? And I heard Connor out, right? I wasn't dismissive of Connor. He's like, look, what if you have to have a hard decision to make or a hard conversation, and you're walking around with a Brandon Graham t-shirt. You're walking around with Lane Johnson, Hungry Dogs, or not with the hungry mask, and then Jason Kelsey, Hungry Dogs Run Faster. To which I said, if I'm a veteran who's been here and I see that, I go, it's kind of cool. Now, you're not wearing a Quez Watkins shirt. Maybe Sirianni would, because Quez is the hardest worker.
Yeah, practice especially. That's where you want to wear the Quez shirt.
But, like, I had no problem with that kind of stuff because I thought that was a way to try to relate and grab the, maybe not total respect, but be like, wow, that guy's here for us. Like, little things like that. Or you can just be Dan Campbell and just be, I say this lovingly, meathead, but like football guy, and I love you guys. Right? Like the way you gain respect, especially because not many teams with a new coach wins 12 games to start a season. Like, the Eagles making the playoffs was an anomaly. They benefited from COVID and all that kind of stuff, but not many people benefited from COVID. The Eagles did, believe it or not. Not many teams go to the playoffs their first year as a coach.
No, and I think it also, like, from the coaching perspective, we put so much on grabbing all of the players at once. It's also about building a staff that, has, your best interest, has the best interest of the organization. Also, that you can not necessarily, it's not ever all your friends, but it's all people that are respected, that respect you, respect what you want to do, and respect, okay, this is what your ideas, these are mine.
Right.
And carrying it out. Because, Nick Sirianni and, Moro Jomo are not, hanging out every second of every day. But, hey, you better believe Sirianni better be on the same page as, his defensive coordinator and then the defensive line coach. And that's a trickle down effect of what he's doing. And once you start to, like, and again, that comes to the piece of things that went wrong this season. You saw the issue defensive coordinator wise, everything that went on there. So there was already a link in the chain that was broken. And then as that starts to work down, that starts to become a problem because, well, who did I like better that was in charge of me? And who's in charge of the reason why the guy that was gone?
Sean Desai or Matt Patricia.
What are we doing
that
here?
Call? Who should I even turn to? Who should I even respect in this situation?
Yeah, and then offensively, when we're talking about the offensive play call, you talk, okay, well, what's the relationship like between Sirianni and Brian Johnson? And when you have a quarterback that's been paid, that elevates their power in this situation. And where's the disconnect from the group of them?
There's players, not just Hurts, players saying they didn't know whose offense it actually was.
Right, and then that's where the respect comes from. And I think that's the one thing, like, when you're given the fresh slate of, like, starting, like, yes, they do end up going to a playoff game in that first season, which helps, but you also get that fresh slate of, like, okay, here's everyone put together on the staff, here's the line of command here, here's the way that all this is going to work. We're putting our imprint on this. And when you find that success, when you find that voice of leadership at first, if you ride that wave and you ride that wave to a playoff game in your first season, you ride that wave to the start that you got off to in the second season, the adversity there and the respect, is
everything's
given.
great. Everything's great. You're not even worried about adversity at that point.
Right.
And you're just like, wow, this guy's great. Like, why shouldn't I listen to what he's saying? And then when times get tough, which you saw last year, and you had to turn to the head coach, he had no answers. And sometimes you wonder if he could even give you an answer if it wasn't, some of the decisions weren't his. But, it's an interesting, it's been an open-ended conversation today about coaches. Now, another storyline, Ray. Storyline number 3. Again, Awful Announcing put out their 5 storylines you're sure to get sick of going into Super Bowl 58. Sin City, Vegas, period. I've never been to Vegas. So I guess I could see myself getting annoyed with it. Like, I could see John loving every every mention, John Kincaid, because he's the biggest Las Vegas fan I know. Like him and my father-in-law. Like, I'm sure they love every second of it, right? I've never been. I don't watch the Super Bowl for the location. So, like, that's going to
Next year I will.
What's that, New Orleans next year? Well, that's because, you're all about it. You made 2 trips. Now you're ready for the third.
Now I've just put a deposit down on an apartment.
Right. But I guess I don't watch the Super Bowl for the location. So maybe that would be. Like, I was tired of, even when the Eagles were in it, I was tired of the Minnesota thing. Because, like, oh, my God, it's so cold. Well, they're playing indoors. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah, this is the worst place to have a Super Bowl. So, okay. I think the one thing that's going to get annoying is, and it's not annoying because I know what, like, the job is being done here, but there's going to be a lot made of the rules upon gambling and the NFL's involvement in gambling and what it means to have a Super Bowl in Vegas. And it's not that annoying is the wrong word for it because it is, something worthwhile to have the discussion about, especially in, the day and age of the way the two intersect. But I do think that at some point, someone's going to go over the top, and it'll probably...
Oh, that if somebody makes a bad play, it's going to be like, were they seen at one of the local casinos?
That, and, now you're bringing everyone to Vegas for this Super Bowl. The Super Bowl isn't an event enough. Now it's in Las Vegas. Let's get... So, yeah, I do think, but you know what? Now that I lay this out for myself, the gambling thing will be the starting point for it. The end of this will be, wow, you got all these people in Vegas, and that by the end of next week, I'll probably be
that's the first one I'm going to get it. Well, no, and I didn't like Mr. Irrelevant either because it's the 49ers. So, yeah, I'm actually, there's so far 2 for 3. I don't care about the Mahomes thing. To me, I like having those kinds of conversations. It's good barroom fodder. If you're just tuning in, the one so far was is Patrick Mahomes the GOAT, the Mr. Irrelevant conversation with Brock Purdy, and now the Vegas thing. So we got 2 more left. We'll get to those during the final segment. Get to some more calls as the show closes out. Best show ever coming your way at 2 o'clock. And climb in at 610-632-0975. What makes a good coach? Also, Valentine's Day scams. Why are you guys still falling for it? I'll explain what next. Right here at 97.5. Attention HVAC contractors for equipment, parts, and supplies for every heating and cooling job. Visit one of Ferguson's counter locations in Bensalem, King of Prussia, Pennsauken, or Westchester today. To close out the show, I have the 5 storylines, according to Awful Announcing, that you're going to get tired of leading up to the Super Bowl 58. The first one, Patrick Mahomes' GOAT conversation. The second one was the Mr. Irrelevant conversation. The third one being just everything Sin City, everything Vegas. I'll give you the other 2 as this segment continues. Get to some more calls as well at 610-632-0975 when we try to figure out what makes a good coach, the relationship with analytics as well, because Mike Florio put out that tweet yesterday that a coach told him that analytics was just a way for people who would never have gotten jobs in football to get jobs in football. To understand that is to understand why they get so defensive whenever anyone questions analytics. And I'm very open about my caveman outlook on analytics. Look, I believe it is a very helpful, useful tool. There's nothing new to, this guy's a pull hitter, shift your outfielders a little bit, right? Like, it's not like that wasn't created yesterday, right? It just got to the point where it was so ridiculous they had to make a rule in it with baseball where they eliminated the shift, right? So, analytics has always been around. It's just now it's a new flashy term. Colin Newby, who does stuff behind the scenes here, he was angry, man. He's like, you can't talk about things that you don't truly understand. But that's the thing. We don't know what analytics really is, right? It's, as you said, Ray, it's when something happens that you don't like, you blame analytics. But I can also reverse that and say coaches can make a call that doesn't go their way and use the numbers to back up the reason why they made those decisions at that time.
Analytics is the boogeyman.
Yes, pretty much.
It's what it is.
For either side.
Yeah, if you don't like something, called analytics, and you congrats, you made your point.
I think we talk about what makes a good coach, and we've talked about the balance, knowing when to literally go with data or not. And I think a lot of times you see maybe some coaches that might be in over their head, not realizing like, all right, this is a time to run the football on this play call. It's the green zone to run the football, blah, blah, blah. But your running back has 4 carries for 2 yards and not having that feel for the game. Like, that's a big part of it, too.
Yeah, and I think also a big part of the analytics conversation, and this is more into a psychology of the way we think about things, but outcome bias. We are an incredibly, well, this is what happened, therefore it must have been a bad or it must have been a good decision.
So I saw a great tweet to that point from Kevin Kincaid. So Sheil Kapadia, who does a great job with The Ringer, on his podcast was talking about Dan Campbell. And the tweet reads as follows: "You are able to make flawless decisions under uncertainty based on vibes in your gut and momentum. Congratulations. Dan Campbell, unfortunately, doesn't have your superpower. His 4th down calls are not why the Lions lost that game." And I agree with that. Like, I've even said, like, if Josh Reynolds holds on to that first football, it's a first down. I had no problem with them going for it. And then also the field goal statistics that you put on the screen earlier, that their kicker of 48-plus yards was 9 of 20 this year, 48%, and that's a historic low in NFL history. So Kevin Kincaid quote tweets it and says, "The problem is a linear line of processing and critical thinking on here and elsewhere. People only think a decision was right if it worked out and wrong if it didn't work out. They are unable to admit that good decisions can fail and bad decisions can succeed," which is why I go back to the World Series 2 years ago. Rob Thompson pulling Zach Wheeler and the home run being allowed by Jose Alvarado to Alvarez has been looked at as a bad decision because of the result. My biggest thing when I argue with callers like Sugar Bear, right, was that it worked every time in every series, and in two games of that series as well, leading up to that exact moment. Nobody said it was the wrong decision the previous time, the time before that, because it worked. But once he gives up that home run, it's, wow, that was a bad decision. You should have kept your ace out there. And I understood why people would say it. Like, I wasn't, like, disagreeing with anybody who said that Wheeler should have stayed in there, but I feel like a lot of people said that after the thought. Like, when I saw Alvarado coming into the game, I was like, he's going to do it again. Because he's done. It's like Mariano. Like, he was pitching at a historic rate. Like, I was like, all right, he's going to get the job done. He's going to get out of another jam here. And they're going to force a Game 7. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So it's to your point as well. If it works out, it's a great decision. If it doesn't work out, it's a bad decision.
Outcome bias.
Sometimes bad decisions can lead to things not working out.
You can make a bad decision and have a great result.
Right, no, you can. Like, trying to think of a specific moment. Like, let's go to the Super Bowl, right? It was probably the right decision to go for it on the goal, the Philly special, where it ends up working out. Let's say Foles drops it like Brady. I probably would still have said that's the right call. You're playing Brady in the Super Bowl. 3 points isn't going to beat him. Field goals isn't going to beat him. You're going to have to score touchdowns. So that probably was the right decision, regardless of the result. Right? I would think. It's easy for me to say, knowing what the result was.
Right, that's exactly. We also probably would end up separating the decision to go for it and the decision to throw it to your quarterback, have your third string tight end. I understand Trey Burton was recruited to replace Tim Tebow as quarterback in Florida, but having him throw a pass to Nick Foles is a little much. So but
hey, it worked.
Hey, exactly, worked. So hey, great decision. Can't knock the decision there.
No.
Good result must be a good decision. I mean, come on, think about real life. People make bad decisions. Sometimes end up with results that,
Maybe I shouldn't have applied to an internship at the Fanatic when I was drunk.
Worked out.
Yeah,
I'd say
probably
worked out.
wasn't the right decision, though.
No. I mean, yeah, probably not. I would probably do that in a clean state of mind. Yeah.
But here
hey,
I am.
Here you are.
Here I am. Sometimes things work out.
Yeah, sometimes decisions, bad process, good result.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I've been teasing this. And I'm doing this as a PSA, but I'm also doing this as, if you still do this, shame on you. Like, I can't help you anymore. So I told you I get these random emails from these PR companies all the time. You're still intrigued by the sexy 70-year-old grandmom murderer.
You still haven't gotten the number.
Because I deleted the email. Why would I want that? I didn't realize you were so into it. I'm sorry. So I get these emails all the time from these PR, would you like to have us on? Would you like to talk about this? Please credit us, blah, blah, blah. And it has nothing to do with sports, ever. I don't know how I got on this. Somebody must have sold my email. I don't know. Dude, I get weird emails, man. I get these
I'm sure you didn't sign up for any of these.
Maybe. All right, so.
Yeah, you're doing a real good job of trying to distance yourself from the sexy grandma.
I get an email every day.
How did it end up in your inbox?
No,
What'd
seriously
you sign up for?
I would like somebody to try to help me out here. This is a legitimate. I want somebody to help me out here. I get emails from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection every day, like 15 emails a day. I have muted the email. I have unsubscribed. I have done it keeps on every day. I don't know what to make of it.
I'm more intrigued as to what you're doing in your free time.
No, I feel like I'm like a spy getting like these emails. Like, am I supposed to know these things?
Seems like it.
All right, so I guess.
But to be clear, so it's on today's show, we've railed against analytics, and you don't know how to fix your email.
Yes. So old man yells at clouds.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So I get an email. Avoid Valentine's Day romance scams. 100 most common photos scammers use revealed, and reformed Nigerian scammer available for interview. So I'm not going to book that person for the show. I'm sorry to say.
So we got the classic. We need you to send over $1,000 to save the.
Yes.
Who's falling for that? It's the year 2020.
I love it. We can arrange interviews with a reformed Nigerian romance scammer and romance scam victims. We can also share a leaked Nigerian romance scammer training manual. These are the emails I get. All right. 5 tips to avoid romance scams for Valentine's Day. And I'm just saying this as a PSA, but if you do it, I don't feel bad for you. Number 1, perform a reverse image search of their profile photo to confirm if they are real. Now, I will say I don't know how to do that stuff, so.
Neither do I. So, all right, I'm already in jeopardy.
Number 2, like, come on. If you're really doing this anymore. Like, Joe Zerzula, one of our great sales execs, early before the show said, what are you talking about today? And I told him, coach, what makes a good coach, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and also I'm going to have some fun with Valentine's Day scams. And he goes, oh, what, for the old people? Here's the deal. like my grandparents 20, 30 years ago. I mean, come on, we're hip. There's no such thing as old anymore. You know what I mean? Like everyone's got smartphones nowadays. Number 2, never send money or give personal information to anyone online. Who's doing that?
Listen, man, you'd be surprised. It's not old.
You get
Old's
these
not
DMs.
what you're worried
You
about.
get these DMs from
Old's not what you're worried about. Lonely. Lonely is the word I'll use. There's another word that ends in Y that I was thinking about, but lonely is the one that I'll stick with here. That's the one I'd be worried about.
Like, here you go. I got every once in a while, I got a follow from Melanie. Her bio is good heart. The profile is a lot of stuff. And it's like, okay.
Oh. Are you looking at that on the computer? Come on, man.
Yes. It's the bots, man. The bots start following.
I don't know, man.
Look, if the follower count increases, I'll take it.
Oof.
So, but like if Melanie, hi, cutie, can you Venmo me $500? Who's doing that?
Lonely people. Lonely people, man. This is not an age thing. This is
All right, go to a bar. Like, I'm sorry.
Some people don't know how to open up the conversation.
I understand.
They think, oh, wow, someone in my DMs? This is awesome. People talk about people being in people's DMs all the time. Let me go see if I can make the most of this situation.
Yeah, and the fourth message is, please pay me $500.
Man, you don't know what their life situation is. These people, I'm not telling you, they're not in the right state to deal with. They're just a little too lonely.
Number 3, avoid anyone that cannot meet because they are in the military or live overseas. Like all right, like I respect the troops. So there's one. But like, hi, I live in Zimbabwe. Would love to get to know you. Can you please send me $1,000?
Which also, and this is just what I've heard from those on the dating apps. This is friends are on those.
Okay.
That's what I've heard from those people.
Yeah.
You can also change the location to go like different places. So this also could be a problem on you. You could have the range too wide where they, now all of a sudden you start pulling different cities.
Did you ever watch The Tinder Swindler on Netflix?
No, I didn't.
I don't feel bad for anyone involved.
Okay,
he was demanding like $10,000, and they were like, "Yeah, here, take it."
I didn't watch it, so I have no take on this.
Oh, dude, it gets to a point where you're like, "All right, I understand. Maybe the first time you gave him like a couple $100, but like it continued, and it's like, all right."
So this dude just made a ton of money off of.
Yeah, and he did nothing illegal.
Oh wow,
he spent no time in jail.
Wow,
or he might have been like too much. Like, trust me, like he didn't lose any of the money because he didn't do anything illegal. Number 4. If they confess love too quickly and demand the same in return, it is a scam. Well, hold the phone. How do I not, love at first sight. Love at first DM, right?
Yeah.
Number 5, if they use poor grammar but claim to be rich and successful, it is a red flag.
You mean that's not Beyonce in my DMs? Beyonce was telling me she was leaving Jay-Z for me.
So I'm doing it as a PSA. Avoid the scams, according to one of these PR things that gets sent my way.
Are you telling me all the dates I got lined up are all scams?
It may be.
Oh, no.
I don't know. All right, let's go to the phones. I know somebody that's not lonely. Uncle Frank. He has us. What's up, Uncle Frank?
No, I'm not. I am blessed. Especially, having all daughters. Oh, my God. We're never alone.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew, I got to ask you. You weren't concerned bringing me up right before the last break, were you?
What was that?
You weren't concerned bringing me up right before the last break, were you?
No, why?
I'm busting your stuff. All right, listen.
Oh, why? You're too big to hold on through a commercial break?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because you win MVP caller, most valuable caller. All of a sudden, you don't have to sit through breaks.
That's right.
97.5 to Frank.
Damn it. I want all yellow jelly beans in my trip. All right. So, good content today.
Oh, thank you.
I like it. So, just like someone we know would say, let's chop it up. Oh, wait. Regarding Embiid, right? You mentioned it's the hatred of the big. I mean, it went from I can go back and back.
I don't think so. Everybody loves Wemby.
Yeah, well,
he's 9'500".
he's a freak show. We all love Manu Bowl. He's a freak show.
Good point.
It was Mike Schmidt. It was Ryan Howard. Now JoJo. Et cetera, et cetera. So I'm with you in this analytic frenzied era. You need to have a blend, right? You need to balance. You're marinating gravy. You need 3 spices. The feel, the analytics, and the experience. The starter beats say, because look, I understand the need of analytics, of course, but it just can't correlate to every game situation, and I think you've mentioned that.
Well, yeah, and that's what separates, I think, some of the best coaches, right? Because they know how to use it as a tool and, look, rely on it on times when you should rely on it. Like, there is legitimate information, right? I'm not trying to just be completely anti-analytics, but there's also feel. Like, if your offense is sputtering, then why would you want to go for it, on your own 40-yard line just because the card says go for it here?
But, listen. What's his name? The kicker was 9 from 20 from
right. So to me, that was a good call by Dan Campbell. Even though Reynolds ended up dropping it. And thanks for the call, Uncle Frank. Like, even though Reynolds ended up dropping it, it was still the right call. And I said just that while I was watching the game. Like, oh damn, that sucks because that was to me the right call. And then of course everything snowballed. Right, 49ers go right downfield, they score. Then Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles it on the second play of the next drive, and then the Niners tie the game up, and that pretty much changes the entire result. But it's the fine line of having that gut feel or not. What are we doing here? Let's go to Doug in South Jersey. What's up, Doug?
What's up, fellas? Thanks for taking my call.
What's up?
So, I heard how excited you guys were, with the 49ers being in the Super Bowl and all. So
I'm so thrilled. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I heard everything. So I just, I have a quick background and I just have a quick question for
okay.
you. So, as you know, the NFC Championship game came around and, Purdy got hurt, Eagles won, then they went on to lose the Super Bowl. Another story. After that, for the months we had to hear Eagle fans, chirp about, them being the 49ers without a quarterback and this and that. And Niner
whoa, with the revisionist history. Who did the talking?
Well, after the game.
Hold on a second. Deebo Samuel wouldn't shut his mouth all offseason. You're saying the Eagles fans did the talking?
Well, they did do a lot of talking. They beat us.
So did Ayuk. So did your kicker. So did McCaffrey. There was a player that remained anonymous saying that the league made a phone call at halftime because the quarterbacks were hurt and they made the Eagles win because of the product. Get the hell out of here. Eagles fans were talking.
I don't do the conspiracy. But anyway. So then, we have to hear it the whole time. Then December 3rd came around. And the 49ers literally broke the Eagles.
Yes.
They broke them.
To which we have talked about. You're not opening the eyes of any Eagles fans right now.
Yeah. So, obviously, the downfall, the collapse happened from there. 10-1 team, historic collapse in the NFL, which we loved, by the way.
You feeling good about yourself, Dougie?
No. It's just basically, I'll get to my question. My question is, the 49er fans, they had good gripe on the Eagles fans. Why exactly do you hate the 49ers?
All right, here's all jokes aside. The big thing is because people tried taking away the legitimacy of the Eagles winning the NFC Championship game. I understand from your vantage point, you're a 49ers fan, you're seeing Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl this year. You would think if Brock Purdy remained healthy that they could have won that NFC Championship game last year. But here's the deal. The Eagles had a historic defense, had 70 sacks. The reason why Brock Purdy got hurt was because the defensive front got to the quarterback. The reason why your 18th string quarterback got hurt was because the Eagles front got to him, and that's why he also got hurt to the point where Christian McCaffrey had to take snaps and Brock Purdy had to come back in just to hand it off. So people tried taking away the legitimacy of the Eagles winning the NFC Championship game just because of this Purdy thing.
Well, do you think the legitimacy would have been a little bit better if they had won the Super Bowl instead of lost it?
No, because they lost by 3 points. It was one of the best Super Bowls of all time. They lost to a dynasty. What happens if your team loses in 2 Sundays, which I expect them to?
But there's no question of why they shouldn't be in the NFC Championship today.
No,
they earned that right.
Yeah, this year the Eagles do not deserve to be in the NFC Championship game. Last year they did, and last year they beat the 49ers, and last year they came seconds away from beating the Chiefs. I don't get what you're getting at here, Doug.
It was gift wrap for them last year, where this year it's not gift wrap for the 49ers. They actually beat a team with a quarterback. It's a big difference.
The 49ers, the 49ers are in the Super Bowl. Congratulations. I appreciate the call, Doug. Like, I don't see, this is what I don't get. So you're trying to take away the Eagles as NFC champions because they lost in the Super Bowl. So that means every team in the history of the Super Bowl, 57 of them now, 57 AFC or NFC champions, depending on who lost in the Super Bowl, did not deserve and were not legitimate conference champions. That's what he's pretty much saying. That's what I'm getting at.
I mean, he's just trying to relegate the whole Brock Purdy and they didn't have a quarterback conversation. His entire call right there boils back down to he's still sitting here talking about if Brock Purdy was healthy.
It's amazing.
They win.
It's amazing. Now, he at least waited a day. Omar literally called. He woke up Monday morning and had to call Philadelphia, which is just, imagine that.
And still did not have more than 30 seconds worth of content prepared.
Doug, that was actually a legit call, even though I think it was moronic. I don't understand how the Eagles legitimately beat the 49ers. Yes, did Brock Purdy get hurt? The Eagles front that was dominant all season long, right? They weren't dominant in the NFC Championship game, and that was it, right? They were dominant all season long. Hassan Reddick went one-on-one with a tight end. That wasn't George Kittle, by the way, who's a tremendous blocker. It was your backup tight end. Your coach put you in that situation. Hassan Reddick beat his man, got to Purdy, got him hurt. Part of the game, right?
Well, yeah, no one, if Hurts last year had actually done even more damage to his shoulder than we thought.
Right.
No one was going to sit there, well, you know what? Whoever won the NFC was delegitimatized because the whole injury to Hurts and the Eagles fell off at the end of the season.
Exactly.
Like, oh, yeah. That he had to play last week to get that number one seed. If, he wasn't able to go that last week or they didn't get the number one seed because of the injury, no one was sitting there crying a river for the Eagles if that didn't happen. And again, the Eagles fans continue to talk about this because the 49ers went on a media blitz, a media tour for months crying over the result.
Oh, yeah. That's why we hate the Niners. That's what, and
the problem.
And calls like this is why I hate the Niners. They're reaching Cowboys fan territory where they're just saying nonsense.
Also, the 49er fan base and personalities that have attacked Philadelphia and have found themselves screaming in the middle of the city in a weird camera angle at their phone. That's also contributed to it. I don't want any joy there. I don't want any joy.
Yeah, no, I want you to be miserable. And then my question is, like, if the 49ers lose in 2 weeks, like, is he going to say, oh, wow, they weren't legit NFC champions? Like, he's trying to do the whole because the Eagles beat injured a quarterback, which, by the way, I want to know where Doug was when Garoppolo and Lance got hurt. You know what I mean? Like, good for you were on your third quarterback, down to your fourth string quarterback, and you still believe that you had a legit shot. You didn't. The Eagles were a good team last year. Very good team last year. Yeah, they had a collapse this year. And the Niners were the beginning of that. I don't run from that. I've pointed out that the 49ers broke the Eagles all the time. But to try to take away the Eagles being NFC champions in the 2022-23 season, I think is nonsense. I do. All right. Speaking of nonsense, storyline number 4 that you're going to get tired of. Kyle Shanahan's redemption arc. Because it's the Niners, yes.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much. I mean, that's going to drive me nuts. I know someone that's going to drive even more nuts. John Kincaid. Talk about the Vegas storyline plays to him.
And then he hates Shanahan.
Shanahan hatred. He is going.
This is a big Super Bowl for Johnny.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in Vegas, Shanahan.
Philadelphian, so Andy, right? He knows all about the Andy Reid stuff. He loves Vegas and he hates Shanahan. It's a pretty big Super Bowl for him, man. All right, there was one more. I lost it. I think you told me.
I could tell you what it is.
You told me,
just,
but I heard
I mean, I don't have the paper in front of me, but I know what it was.
Now, this is a lock for a lot of people. I said it yesterday. I don't really care. But the Kelsey family cinematic universe. Now, notice it's the Kelsey family. It's not just Taylor Swift. Now, Jason Kelsey is going to be all over the place. Now, this is a nationally written story, not locally. There are probably people outside of Philadelphia that are tired of Jason Kelsey. Probably.
Oh, yeah. I would venture to say that some of the curmudgeons around here might also be
absolutely.
sick of him, too.
Yeah, for sure, which I don't understand. Like, let him be happy. Like, the guy's literally provided us one of our only Super Bowl. It was a big part of it. The speech, he's a legend, you know. But it's the whole Kelsey family dynamic. So it's Travis. It's Jason. I don't know how you can hate the mom. Like, let her do her thing. She baked cookies before the Super Bowl. That's adorable. How can you hate that? How can you hate a mom?
Look at me. I'm not hating. There's no hate in my heart. Okay.
So it says in the write-up, it was just a year ago that the world was introduced to Donna Kelsey as her two sons, Jason and Travis, became the first brothers to face each other in the Super Bowl. In the time since, Donna's become a mainstream celebrity. Jason has become the most famous center in NFL history. Travis seemingly has as many endorsement deals as Shaq, and as you may have heard, he's also dating musical recording artist Taylor Swift. Poor Mr. Kelsey, not even mentioning any of these things.
Yeah, he really does not get mentioned at all.
But Taylor Swift, like the Swift thing, I don't care. I just don't. I think she's a fraud when it comes to being a fan of the Chiefs. You're a Philadelphian. You know. And the whole article, as we talked about a lot.
Yeah, the fraud for me is more in the, wow, this football thing is fun. That's the fraudulent
Yeah, you said you knew all about it. I remember, I told you I was at the concert, the Link, years ago. Snuck into it.
Nice.
Yes, fun. Sometimes I don't like admitting it because it's Taylor Swift, but, I snuck into a concert.
What's the wrong with that? She's the biggest pop star.
That's true.
I mean, it's an event.
I get to say I did it.
Yeah, it's an event.
At the Link, yeah.
Everyone always. Why are people upset? If you go to an event, you go to an event.
That's true.
It's you got to see her before, and from what it sounds like, for a lot cheaper than most people can even imagine.
Yeah, a lot cheaper. But she said the whole. I remember the stadium watching it growing up. Eagles fan.
Yeah, listen.
Fraud? You're a fraud.
That's the fraudulent part.
Yeah.
The whole putting on, like, I understand.
I don't care that she's rocking Chiefs gear for her boyfriend. Like, I don't care.
That to me is not the
That's why I don't care. Like, people get upset that Jason Kelsey's wearing a Chiefs knit cap.
The one thing I respect most about everything is Kylie Kelsey not wearing anything Chiefs.
That's a good point.
Her commitment not to wearing anything that's outside of the Eagles is impressive.
That's
a good thing from the documentary as well.
I appreciate that.
But the one thing that will get annoying from this, it's not so much my distaste for any of the people. It's going to be the media coverage of the plane from Tokyo
it's gonna
to Vegas. I feel like that's
well, not just that. Who was it? Was it Michelle Tafoya? Who had the report that Travis Kelsey might retire after this year?
I believe it was Tafoya.
And focus on his relationship with Taylor Swift. That's gonna be talked about at length.
That's gonna be talked about. I think it's been Florio that's been running with the Andy Reid's gonna retire thing. I think it's been Florio.
Wow. Could you imagine if that's just? I mean, they sold Mahomes.
Mahomes doing the Fresh Prince finale.
Yeah, pretty much. He's still, how old is he? 25? 26?
Mahomes, Rashee Rice, and hey, there you go. Spags gets another shot.
Yeah, he's 28, Mahomes. Yeah, he's still got another 15 years.
Oh, yeah, he needs to, man. We're going to fill up hours of content about him being the GOAT. We need a couple more years of this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's go to Fred on City Ave. What's up, Fred?
Yo, Tunis. Long time no speak, brother.
Yo, what's up, Freddie?
Yeah, man. I thought you were a baseball guy. My question's a baseball question. Because are you worried, like I'm worried, that the Phillies haven't gone out and gotten another closer? Like Craig Kimbrell is the reason we don't have a World Series, and they've done nothing to replace him, and all the pitchers are off the market.
Well,
So
you know what they're gonna do. they're not going to have a set role. Alvarado is going to be probably the guy that pitches in the most high leverage situations. So that could be in the 9th, that could be in the 8th. They're going to probably believe in a bounce back for Sir Anthony Dominguez. They're going to give Kerkering another shot.
See, that's where they made the mistake, is bringing a rookie in to try to finish off.
Oh, I agree. I thought he obviously did great against the Braves, but
on the road.
Yeah, it was over his head. He wasn't ready for the situation. He couldn't throw a strike, and it was nothing but sliders.
Dude, Dombrowski's got to do. You got to bring somebody in here. Like you got to bring somebody in here. But I mean, when are you going to start talking about baseball? Do you do the baseball show still?
Oh no, that ended like 3 or 4 years ago, Freddie.
Oh man,
all the sports books took over. I love my FanDuel Sportsbook app.
Dude, you're a baseball man.
Yeah, I know, but I got to talk Eagles, man. Look, trust me, Phillies are right around the corner. We got spring training coming up. I appreciate the call, Freddie. I was not expecting it. Why aren't you talking Phillies? Call. Hey, best show ever. You know, Fred wants Phillies content. Maybe you can hear it for 4 hours coming up 2 o'clock. I was not ready for that.
I'm kind of excited by that.
I'm excited by it too, because look, I'm pumped. Look. Obviously, my roles have changed here at the station a little bit. You know, I got you got to talk Eagles, man, and all the other hits. You know, Phillies aren't there just yet, but I am surprised it's been quiet, like all off season except for Nola.
Yeah, that Hector deal. Not that I want him as a closer, but that Hector deal kind of stung.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, well, I'll do it. We gotta get out of here. Best show ever coming your way next, right here on 97.5 The Fanatic.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Short-handed Sixers fall short. I'm Ray Dunn. This update is brought to you by Unbound.org. A girl in Kenya dreams of becoming a doctor. An elder in Guatemala dreams of being part of a community. Reach out and change their world, and it will change your own. Unbound.org. The 76ers fell to the Portland Trailblazers 130-104 last night. Once again, without Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, the 76ers fell to the Trailblazers, who entered the night 20 games under 500. 76ers started the game leading by 8 points after the first quarter, but were outscored by 34 points in the next 3 quarters. Former Sixer Jeremy Grant scored 27 points to lead all scorers in the win. The 76ers return to action tonight at 10 o'clock against the Golden State Warriors. Catch the live call right here on 97.5 The Fanatic. The Eagles reportedly are making a few hires and adding to their defensive staff. The Eagles hired former Seahawks defensive coordinator Clint Hurt to be their defensive line coach. In addition to Hurt, Carl Scott was reportedly hired as the defensive backs coach, also coming from the Seahawks staff. Both reports come courtesy of the NFL Network's Tom Pelissero. The Philadelphia Inquirer's Jeff McClain joined Andrew earlier on today to talk all things Birds. You catch that conversation one more time